Chapter 469. The person who walked in was Movie Queen Anne, and of course, Manager Lee, whom General Qin had sent over. Movie Queen Anne's elegant and beautiful face paused for a moment when she saw the youngster. Then she smiled with two charming dimples. "Fujio? Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Fujio stood up politely and smiled faintly. "Brother Mo drank too much, so I brought him back." "Drank too much?" After hearing this, Movie Queen Anne turned around and looked at Manager Lee in confusion. He seemed to be asking if her son had ever drunk too much before. Manager Lee had seen much of the world. He calmly greeted Qin Mo, young master Fu. Then he stood aside and didn't say anything. He really didn't want to say that his young master couldn't withstand special training, and that even 3 bottles of Wuliangye couldn't make him drunk. Movie Queen Anne didn't care too much. Since the youngster she liked was here, she would ask Fujio to try on the clothes she mentioned. Fujio naturally wouldn't agree. She smiled faintly and said, "Auntie, I'll try it on another day. Since you're back, you can take care of Brother Mo. His stomach isn't feeling well and I have an appointment to keep. It's already past time, so I have to go now." Movie Queen Anne was a reasonable person. She smiled and said, "All right, another day." No one noticed that while the two of them were talking, Qin Mo, who was sitting at the dining table eating porridge, had a pair of icy eyes. Fujio didn't say anything more. She put on her black jacket and made a "I'm leaving" gesture to Qin Mo. But she didn't know if the Almighty didn't see it, but he didn't care about her. Maybe it was because he was eating porridge. She didn't have time to think too much. Yao Yao must be waiting anxiously. With this thought, Fujio quickened her steps. She didn't look back. But as soon as she looked back, Qin Mo's hand, which was holding the wooden spoon, paused heavily after she left. Qin Mo ate 2 more mouthfuls of porridge, but he realized that the taste seemed to have changed. It didn't have the same aroma as before. In the end, he put down the bowl and turned to take the black coat from the back of the chair. Movie Queen Anne looked at him. "Mo, where are you going? Didn't you say you had a stomachache?" "I'm fine now." Qin Mo's voice was calm, and his walking posture didn't look like someone who had a stomachache just now. "You recovered so quickly? The stomach ailment is really magical." Movie Queen Anne muttered to herself as she watched her son's tall figure disappear by the door. And why was there no one at home? What about Auntie Zhang and the others? Usually he should be at home at this time. Movie Queen Anne was bewildered. On the other hand, Qin Mo was looking for someone after he went out. But after searching for a long time, he couldn't find any trace of the young man. He must have gotten into the car and gone to the meeting place. Qin Mo continued walking forward in silence. His movements were slow and elegant, which seemed to match his usual nonchalant attitude. It was just that the fingers hidden under the black gloves used strength. He stared expressionlessly at the emptiness in front of him and stood there silently. Gradually, a cool breeze touched his body, however he didn't seem to feel it. There was no smile on his handsome face. For some reason his chest felt a little stuffy. That kind of feeling is like seeing something you like very much. He wanted to take it for himself. He didn't hesitate to use all means. Chapter 470. The Jiang family's birthday banquet couldn't be ordinary. In reality, Shui Yaoyao didn't want to appear at such an occasion. Because she knew that Jiang's didn't want her as a sister and didn't want to accept her as a mother. As long as she saw the man's expressionless side profile, Shui Yaoyao would panic. She wished that her mother didn't marry Uncle Jiang. But she couldn't be so selfish. Because she knew that Uncle Jiang was a good person. When it came to her mother, Uncle Jiang was really careful and gentle. Everyone said that her mother had accumulated good fortune in her past life, that she could get a rich husband by buying breakfast. It was probably because she was old and didn't have so many thoughts. Jiang's father was a soldier and liked Mama Shui's gentleness in taking care of others. There had always been misunderstandings between him and his son. The family couldn't live without a mistress. Jiang's father had hesitated about remarrying. In the end, he had decided to marry her. It was normal for them to get to know each other and fall in love. He had to give the woman a status. He had discussed this with Jiang's. Jiang's had only told him to do as he pleased. He didn't seem to dislike it, but he didn't agree either. Until he saw Shui Yaoyao's family, his expression changed completely. He seemed to be certain that Shui Yaoyao's mother was doing it for money. Perhaps even Jiang's didn't know why he didn't want his father to remarry. But at the same time he understood. In the Jiang family he would always be the legitimate grandson. With his grandfather around, any woman had to follow the rules. Shui Yaoyao's mother understood this. She treated Jiang's like a child. After all, no matter how noble he was only 3 years older than Shui Yaoyao. But after interacting with him, Shui Yaoyao's mother understood. Children had different ways of thinking. For example, Jiang Zhuo. He was a mature child and she had to consider everything. But that was normal since she was someone else's stepmother. A few days before the birthday party, she had told the children at home to be quiet when they arrived at the Jiang family and not to take what they shouldn't take. Shui Yaoyao knew that her mother had to consider many things after marrying into this family. Hence, even when Shui Yaoyao was mocked, she didn't tell her mother. Just like now. What do you think she's doing at this birthday party? Don't tell me he still hasn't given up on young Master Jiang? That's disgusting. In the past, I only thought that she was fat, but now that young Master Jiang is her brother, she wants to be close to him? Didn't you see how much young Master Jiang hates their family? You don't say. Some poor people don't even care about their self-esteem for money. For example, her mother married Uncle Jiang for money. Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists tightly. If it wasn't for her mother's reminder, she really wanted to rush over and tell these rich people. Not all poor people do things for money. Why did these people always judge a person's character by whether they had money or not? Perhaps it was because of these reasons that she was unwilling to come to the Jiang family. However, she couldn't not come to such an occasion. Look at her. Why did she learn to wear a skirt? She's so ugly. Why do I feel like she has lost some weight? Chapter 471. Shui Yaoyao heard their words and knew that these people had a good relationship with Jiang Zhuo. She didn't know if they said that because Jiang Zhuo hated her. For a moment she couldn't take it anymore. She lifted her eyes and looked at one of the girls. That girl saw Shui Yaoyao looking at her and her anger rose. She immediately sneered, thinking that this poor thing dared to look at her like that. Come. Since it's a birthday party, we should find something to liven things up. That girl was dressed very beautifully and she spoke with a smile. Her family was very rich. Standing beside her was none other than Han Susu, who had been obsessed with Fujio recently. They were all from the same school, had a good relationship and often hung out together. To be honest, if it weren't for Jiang Zhuo, they wouldn't even look at Shui Yaoyao. Because in their hearts, a fat and poor person like Shui Yaoyao was an embarrassment to girls like them. Jia, what do you want to play? Han Susu knew what her friend wanted to do, but she decided to go along with it. They would be happy to let that fat pig leave as soon as possible. But Yao Jia didn't think so. She had always liked Jiang Zhuo, and it wasn't easy for her to get the chance to be with him. Why could this fat pig see Jiang Zhuo every day just because she was his sister? Isn't this a wine bottle? Let's not go overboard. Let's just play dare. Whoever spins it, that person has to find someone of the opposite sex to hug. Yao Jia began to spin the wine bottle as she spoke. Her strength was clearly intentional as the bottle turned to the left and aimed at Shui Yaoyao. I didn't expect things to be so coincidental. Yao Jia pretended to be surprised as she looked at Shui Yaoyao. Then she laughed. Since you've been chosen, go ahead. Shui Yaoyao's eyes darkened. I didn't say I wanted to participate in your game. Shui Yaoyao, do you still want to quarrel with everyone on such an occasion? Yao Jia's voice was indifferent. It's just a game. Shui Yaoyao wanted to say something, but she saw Jiang Zhuo walking over. Behind him were his good friends. They were all noble and handsome. It was obvious that Jiang Zhuo had heard their conversation. But the man didn't say anything. Shui Yaoyao thought that he might have tacitly approved of her behavior. They even felt that she would spoil everyone's mood if she didn't agree. Yaoyao really didn't want her mother to have a hard time in this family because of her. But who was she going to find to hug? The person standing behind Jiang Zhuo laughed. Your sister is so dumb, she could have just hugged you. She had thought that Jiang Zhuo wouldn't agree, but she hadn't expected him to respond with a faint "mh." But why would Shui Yaoyao hug Jiang Zhuo? That person had already told her to stay away from him. Especially after that kind of thing had happened. Shui Yaoyao was afraid to recall what happened that night because the man's disgusted expression was so obvious. If he went up now, he would probably be despised even more. Shui Yaoyao had her own pride. Compared to Jiang Zhuo, the stranger was probably better. With that thought in mind, Shui Yaoyao plucked up her courage and asked for a hug from a stranger at the party. Chapter 472. Yao Jia watched from the side, her lips curling up. She had expected such a situation. Who would be willing to accept an invitation from a fat pig? The reason why she suggested this was to embarrass Shui Yaoyao. It would also let that person know that even if she entered the Jiang family, she wasn't fit to be Jiang Zhuo's sister. People from the slums would never be on the same level as them. If the other party was good-looking and knew how to suck up to them, it would be fine. But Shui Yaoyao hadn't expressed anything after so long. She was just a poor person, so what was she being so arrogant about? Shui Yaoyao also knew that the other party was deliberately making things difficult for her. Perhaps we will encounter such occasions. She clearly knew what methods the other party used and what intentions they had. But for someone more important than herself, she couldn't resist or make a fuss. Because if she did anything, she would be criticized again. Her mother didn't teach her well. Children from ordinary families didn't know the big picture, etc. The laughter by her ear was obvious. She stood there stiffly, wanting to throw everything away. Yao Jia crossed her arms and chuckled. Yaoyao, why aren't you moving? Go quickly, there are still people over there. Since we're going to play, let's play to our heart's content. Go quickly. A circle of people ostracizing another. This kind of behavior was usually the most effective at killing people without leaving a trace. A rich person's values weren't necessarily better than a poor person's. Things like values were never judged by age or wealth. But rich people often used money as a weapon. And some people indeed wanted to suck up to those who were rich. Such a phenomenon had existed since the beginning of time. That was why there were so many people helping Yao Jia to resist Shui Yaoyao. The longer this dragged on, the more embarrassed Shui Yaoyao would be. The fact that no one accepted her hug was an insult to one's self-esteem. Jiang Zhuo gripped his wine glass, his charming peach blossom eyes showing signs of turning cold. His good friend behind him wanted to say something, but for some reason he took a step towards Shui Yaoyao. However, no one had expected that there would be someone faster than him. It was a tall and slender figure that appeared behind Shui Yaoyao. His short silver hair was messy, and there were still traces of snow on it. The black diamond earrings matched with the leather jacket only made the man look handsome and luxurious, with the fair skin of a vampire noble. Standing in front of a group of men in suits, he was one of a kind. It was because the figure was too handsome. Therefore, everyone couldn't help but turn around and look over. Shui Yaoyao felt someone tugging at her arm from behind, followed by a cold hug. The youngster's gentle and pleasant voice rang out warmly. I'm late because of the traffic jam. I was right behind you. Why didn't you invite me to hug you, Yaoyao wanted to cry. She really wanted to cry. She buried her face into the young man's shoulder, and the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. With Highness Jiu around, there was nothing to be afraid of. Fu Jiu had always protected Yaoyao unconditionally. Moreover, she believed that things like protection were relative. When she was facing cyber violence, the girl in his arms was the first to speak. People would have many friends in their lifetime. But true friends. Chapter 473. As for the embrace of these two people, discussions immediately broke out. Look, isn't that the popular Spade Z in the esports circle? F***CK, I never expected my big Spade to attend such a birthday party. Who's that person he's carrying? Girlfriend? Wait a minute, why do I find that girl familiar? She's my Yaoyao. What, your Yaoyao? He's also playing Hero Supreme Alliance. Move aside, don't disturb my view of my idol. I want to see my big Spade. The two of them seem to have a good relationship. They're hugging each other. What do you think? For some reason I feel like they're a good match. It had to be said that such a scene was very beautiful. Under the light, the black earring on the young man's ear was still emitting a faint glow. He was handsome and flamboyant. Han Susu watched from the side. She was originally happy that the young man had appeared. But when she saw the youngster pull Yaoyao into his arms, her gaze turned hostile. However, no one noticed that apart from Han Susu, there was another person who clenched his fists as he watched this scene. It was none other than Jiang Zhuo. Jiang Zhuo's friend didn't even have time to retract the shock on his face. What did Jiang Zhuo intend to do with that step? Fu Jiu noticed his gaze. She looked over and smiled. Young Master Jiang, we meet again. Jiang Zhuo's attitude was much colder when he saw the youngster. He glanced at Yaoyao and replied with a faint "Amish." Fu Jiu was standing next to Shui Yaoyao. She glanced around and smiled. Yaoyao is a girl. It's not a game to let her hug someone so casually. But young Master Jiang doesn't seem to mind that someone would play such a dirty game at his birthday party. Jiang Zhuo narrowed his eyes. However, Yao Jia's expression changed because of the word vile. It's not up to you to decide if it's vile or not. Yaoyao, what's the meaning of this? Did you bring your friend here to cause trouble? Shui Yaoyao wanted to speak. Fu Jiu pulled her back and said emotionlessly, it's a misunderstanding. We are usually very busy playing hero, so we don't have time to mess around. Today Yao Yao came just to give us a gift. After all, we are all from the Jiang family. But this lady, your surname doesn't seem to be Jiang, right? In Jiang family's territory, young Master Jiang can tolerate an outsider questioning his sister. Young Master Jiang has a good temper, but I'm different. Yao Yao is my teammate. Since no one here welcomes us, Yao Yao, where's the stuff you bought? Give it to young Master Jiang. Young Master Jiang is very generous, he won't mind if you leave early or not. There was a lot of content in this speech. There were so many that Jiang's gaze changed. He looked at Shui Yao Yao, his eyes cold. It was the first time Shui Yao Yao could look him in the eye. She had never owed Jiang's anything. Even if she was delusional and used that kind of gaze to fall in love with this person. And every time, because he talked to her, she felt that she was different. There was a chance. She wanted to tell Jiang's, I only like you. If you don't like me, you can tell me. I will give up, even if the process of giving up is a little difficult. But I have never wanted to hinder you or take you away from anyone. I understand that liking someone is also a form of self-respect. Shui Yao Yao didn't say much and took out the gift. Happy birthday. These were the most ordinary words. Very polite. This way no one would say that she and her mother were poor and uncultured. Chapter 474. Jiang's didn't reach out for the gift, he just looked at Shui Yao Yao, his voice faint. Are you leaving early? Shui Yao Yao wasn't sure if he didn't mind that her gift wasn't expensive enough. Honestly speaking, her gift was indeed more expensive than what others had given him. For example, a luxury car or a luxury watch. There was no need for Shui Yao Yao to stay here. She wasn't suited for this kind of environment. Instead of being on guard against some people's despicable means, she might as well go to the internet cafe with Highness Jiu. The competition has already begun. I need to practice. Seeing that he didn't accept the gift, Shui Yao Yao turned and passed the gift to the receptionist beside her. Jiang's gaze turned extremely cold. Did you change your target again? His words successfully made Shui Yao Yao's back stiffen. At this moment, Fu Jiu curled up her thin lips and brought Shui Yao Yao over. The gift is here. Say goodbye to Andy and leave. The competition is so busy, so you don't have to come here if you don't want to. With that, she lifted her eyes and looked deeply into Jiang's eyes. Young Master Jiang, we shall take our leave. Jiang's didn't speak, his gaze deepening as he stared at their backs, his grip on the cup tighter. The people at the side could tell that Jiang's was unhappy. But everyone thought it was because Shui Yao Yao wasn't generous enough. Hence, Jiang's smile disappeared. Yao Jia said from the side, birds of a feather flock together. The Fu family's young master doesn't seem to have a good reputation. When did Yao Yao hang out with such a person? Jiang's cheer up. It's good that these people aren't from our circle are gone. With them around, your birthday banquet will be even happier. Han Susu immediately spoke up. What bad reputation. Don't spout nonsense. I know my idol well. Yao Yao is only taking care of him because she's in the same team as him. At the end of the day, it's all Yao Yao's fault. She's clingy. The scene just now had already agitated Han Susu. She had never imagined that the youth would be so gentle to anyone. She could tolerate the youth being nice to Brother Qin. After all, they were two grown men. But he was actually good to a fat girl? Han Susu couldn't tolerate this. He was sure that Shui Yao Yao was trying to seduce him. She had seduced Big Brother Jiang in the past, but now she didn't even let her Prince Charming off. Why don't you take a look at yourself? So cheap. The more Han Susu thought about it, the darker her eyes became. She's trying to suck up to Fu Jiu again. I can tell as well. Yao Jia muttered disdainfully. Why are both mother and daughter so virtuous? Before she could finish her sentence, a muffled sound of glass shattering interrupted the soft music playing in the hall. In an instant, there was an unprecedented silence in the banquet. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, including Yao Jia. Jiang's was still standing there, the cuffs of his white shirt stained with blood. He couldn't tell if it was red wine or blood. The wine glass was crushed in his palm. His face didn't change at all. Instead, his eyes were very deep as he looked at the girls in front of him. Ask them to leave. Young master. The receptionist was still hesitant. After all, they all had business dealings, not to mention that Miss Han was inside. Chapter 475. At that moment, everyone understood that young Master Jiang was really angry this time. Han Susu's face turned pale. Brother Jiang, are you saying that you're chasing me away? Jiang's didn't speak, but his attitude was obvious. Why? Han Susu's anger rose. Are you afraid of hurting our feelings? Jiang Zhuo turned his head, his voice faint. What? Because this is the Jiang family. When he said this, he glanced at Yao Jia. That glance made Yao Jia's body sway. It didn't affect the progress of the birthday party even if the 3 or 4 girls weren't asked out. But how could Han Susu take it lying down? She couldn't calm her anger. It was all because of that fat girl. It could be said that this was the scene Qin Mo saw when he entered. Han Susu seemed to have seen her savior. Brother Qin, did Brother Jiang have some bad luck to chase us out? Are you kidding me? We are doing it for his own good, helping him deal with his fat pig stepsister. What's wrong with that? Qin Mo listened to the cause and effect without a change in expression. In the end he said faintly, the fat pig you mentioned is also a member of our Supreme Alliance. What do you mean? Han Susu widened her eyes. Qin Mo's gaze was faint. What I mean is, if I were Jiang Zhuo, I would also ask you out. What happened to the manners the Han family taught you? After being disrespected twice in a row, Han Susu was so angry that her chest felt suffocated. Qin Mo didn't look at Han Susu again. Ever since they were young, he had never been interested in her. He was different from Jiang Zhuo. Even if he remembered their past relationship, he wouldn't overdo it. That was why Han Susu was afraid of Qin Mo. He was too cold-blooded. After they left, the party went on as usual. Only those who were close to Jiang Zhuo had gone upstairs. On such a day, blood couldn't be spilled. Hence, the bandaging had to be left to the brothers. When Qin Mo walked up, Jiang Zhuo was still looking in a direction, his expression nonchalant. No one knew what he was thinking. When he saw Qin Mo, he smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. My sister seems to have taken a liking to your brother. How about it? Do you want to get married? Qin Mo looked at him, his expression indifferent. What about the other two? Who knows? Jiang Zhuo played with the present in his hands, his gaze cold. You left early, does your team allow dating now? Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. It was allowed in the past. Jiang Zhuo arched a brow. What about the future? Puppy love isn't good for high school students. Qin Mo puffed out a smoke ring, his handsome side profile noble and indifferent. But can't you control your sister? Jiang Zhuo smiled. You're the one who can't control your brother. A big part of his reason for coming here is to save the day. Qin Mo extinguished the cigarette in the ashtray, turned his face and picked up the phone on the table. His voice was calm. It's getting late. Even if you aren't in the mood, you still have to go down to cut the cake. Jiang Zhuo arched a brow. Qin Mo's expression was calm. Your attitude determines the attitude of the people around you towards Shui Yao Yao. If you don't mind, forget it. If you do, it's better to be more or less the same. Even if you can't accept Uncle Zhang's remarriage. When did you start to care about other people's matters? Jiang Zhuo smiled. Chapter 476. As he spoke, he pressed his cell phone and made a call. The person on the other end of the line was none other than Manager Feng, who was drinking with a group of reporters. Qin Mo didn't say much, just a few words. Inform all the team members that in half an hour, there will be a training session at the top floor of the Qin group. Jiang Zhuo lifted his eyebrows when he heard this. Was Qin Mo using official business for personal gain? At the cocktail party, the reporters saw Feng Yi pause and couldn't help asking, Boss Feng, what's wrong? Come have another drink. As a manager known as a fox, Feng Yi smiled gently. Nothing, it's nothing. But in his heart, he was cursing, Almighty, why did you make such a call at this time? I'm going to the washroom. Feng Yi didn't put down his phone, holding it. After he walked out of the room, his expression changed instantly. Almighty, can you stop fooling around? There's only a day and a half off, and you still want everyone to train? At this time, they should have just met their beloved girl and are preparing to watch a movie of love. If this goes on, our Supreme Alliance will really become a monk team. Qin Mo stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket, his voice unchanged and indifferent. Call and inform. 5 words. Feng Yi lost his temper. But on second thought, it was easier to manage the team members without girlfriends. In fact, wasn't it because of this that he was always here? It was the same in every industry. When some people became famous, they would become chaotic. It wasn't like Feng Yi hadn't encountered any professional team members flirting with fans. Compared to other managers, at least he didn't have to worry about his team members' views on love. Because all of them really had the feeling that they couldn't get married. But it was strange that there were so many fans. If Feng Yi had a deeper understanding, he wouldn't have found it strange. For example, Some female juniors fans wanted to give Lin Feng something similar to a love letter on Christmas Eve. Hence, after seeing Yunhu at school, they wanted to ask him for help. Yunhu looked at her and suddenly laughed. It's not fair. It was the first time that the female juniors saw Yunhu laugh. In the law enforcement university, Yunhu was almost an unattainable existence. If there wasn't anyone else she could ask for help, the female junior wouldn't have the guts to trouble Yunhu. There was always a kind of person that you wanted to see but you were afraid to see. At this moment, the junior blushed when she saw Yunhu's smile, her heart thumping furiously. He was really too handsome. That tall and straight figure and that handsome side profile made one's body heat up uncontrollably. What's unfair? Yunhu lowered his lids, his gaze deep. You're only giving it to Lin Feng and not me? Looking at the man's handsome appearance, the junior felt as if something had pierced through her heart. She immediately said, "This is for you." Yunhu chuckled, his lips turning cold. "Isn't this for Lin Feng? I can make it up to Senior Lin in the future." The junior sister's cheeks were pink. "There are 2 movie tickets in there. Senior brother, you have?" Before the beauty could finish her words, a figure jumped out from behind Yunhu and wrapped his arms around his neck. "You're really a brother waiting for me so late at night." Lin Feng was a slow-witted person. Chapter 477. That girl didn't expect Lin Feng to suddenly appear and she was embarrassed. Yunhu was calm. "No, she wanted to give you something but when she saw me she said she wanted to give it to me so I accepted it." When Lin Feng heard this, he glanced in the direction of the girl. He had quite an impression of this person. It was said that she was very pure. However, it seemed like that wasn't the case. "Then, are you guys making an appointment?" Lin Feng raised his brows. Yunhu took out his phone and showed him the group message. "Training? Group training? At this time?" Lin Feng screamed. Does that Fox Feng Yi have any humanity left? However, on second thought, training was good. It saved him the trouble of asking Yunhu to reject girls' dates. He had to remind Yunhu about this when there was no one else around. The girl blushed. Her heart, which had been pounding furiously, stopped when she saw Yunhu's emotionless side profile and Lin Feng's guarded gaze. He suddenly realized that he had done something wrong. He wanted to explain but found that he couldn't. She originally thought that although Senior Lin was very good, Senior Yun was simply too domineering when compared to Senior Lin. They weren't even on the same level. That was why they decided to change their target at the last minute. However, Senior Yun's final smile was truly filled with mockery. She must have seen wrongly. After all, Senior Yun had just said that it was unfair. But Yunhu's next sentence shattered her fantasies. It's best to give it to the person who should have it. What did that mean? The girl wanted to clarify things. Lin Feng was one step ahead of her, dragging Yunhu away. When there were only 2 people left on the road, Lin Feng let out a long sigh. "Old tiger, let me tell you. You don't have much contact with girls so you don't understand how scheming they are. Just look at that girl. She chased after me before and now she's chasing after you. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Such a fickle woman isn't worthy of you. So she chased you first." Yunhu's face was calm, but his tone sounded like he had just realized something. Lin Feng put his hand on his shoulder. "I'm lying to your grandson. I definitely didn't mean to slander others. It's not that I don't believe you." Yunhu pretended to be deep in thought. "I'm just wondering if she wants to get close to me through you." When Lin Feng heard that, he exclaimed, "Damn, that's definitely the case. There's no need for you to think about it anymore. There was a woman who did this to me before. Do you really think that I, Lin Feng, am a fool? Don't worry, in the future if there's another woman who tries to get close to me, I'll definitely check before coming into contact with her." "Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to find a girlfriend?" Yunhu asked. Lin Feng laughed. "I'm so handsome I'll find you sooner or later." "Is that so?" Yunhu's gaze deepened. "Then I wish you all the best." This guy clearly had a face that was extremely intelligent. Actually, he wasn't that smart. Yunhu looked at the foggy Jiang city. He had already distanced himself from girls, so this sort of thing would probably be much less frequent in the future. As for a girlfriend, well, he could only think about it. Lin Feng was very serious, and he was prepared to have less contact with girls in the future. On the other hand, Fu Jiao furrowed her pretty eyebrows after receiving the news of the training. Yao Yao tilted her head. "What?" "Nothing," Fu Jiao said, but she replied to Feng Yi's message. Chapter 478. Drank too much? You still have a stomachache? After Manager Feng saw this message, he immediately forwarded it to Qin Mo. The specific content was, "Little Spade said you have a stomachache and are not suitable for training." Qin Mo glanced at his phone, his expression indifferent. "Tell him that time is of the essence. Even if my stomach hurts, I will participate." Manager Feng's intuition told him that something was wrong. Moreover, Little Spade probably didn't know that the Almighty was the one who wanted everyone to train. Manager Feng simply didn't send a message. Instead, he made a phone call. "Almighty, tell me the truth. Why do you want to train today?" "To prevent puppy love." With that, Qin Mo hung up the phone. It was because of the two people who walked out of the internet cafe. Fu Jiao and Shui Yaoyao didn't see Qin Mo at first. No one knew what they were talking about, but they were both smiling at each other. Until Fu Jiao sensed something and looked up. At the end of the corridor, Qin Mo took out a cigarette from the pack. He tilted his head and lit it. Then he leaned against the wall and puffed out smoke. He played with the lighter in his hand and looked at them with the corners of his eyes raised. Fu Jiao didn't expect Qin Mo to show up here. "Brother Mo, why are you? It's on the way. I came to pick you up." Qin Mo's voice was cold. "The car is outside." Fu Jiao saw that his lips were a little pale and thought that his stomach was hurting badly. "Are you really in such a hurry to have the training today?" "Emimich," Qin Mo replied faintly and glanced at Yao Yao. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have interrupted your date." Shui Yao Yao. Why did she feel that Almighty Qin's eyes were filled with coldness just now? Obviously, the young man couldn't sense it. Because there was only one thing in Fu Jiao's mind, and that was how to relieve the Almighty's pain. Moreover, Qin Mo would never show his cold side in front of Fu Jiao. Qin Mo knew very well that anyone who was in the rebellious phase of adolescence, they all hated to have their feelings interfered with. Psychology once said that it was often best not to let the other party notice that you were interfering with them. Otherwise, even if there was nothing to begin with, there would still be something because of the rebellion. Qin Mo looked at the youngster's face, his brows furrowing into a deep frown. Why did he choose such a troublesome fellow as his younger brother? Fu Jiao sat in the car and saw that the man didn't look well. She leaned over and asked in a low voice, "Does it hurt?" It wasn't a stomachache, but Qin Mo felt that the current situation was pretty good. He looked at the youngster without retorting or saying a word. His face was thin and his lips were pale. Fu Jiao looked at him and let out a long sigh. She naturally reached out and touched the Almighty's head. She said with a smile, "Don't cry. Move your claws away." Qin Mo laughed in anger. The chauffeur and Shui Yaoyao's back stiffened. Only young Master Jiao dared to be like this with Almighty Qin. They trained together on Christmas Eve. Only Supreme Alliance was like this. However, since they had decided to do the training, everyone was very serious. Fatty even took out the information that he had gathered and shared it. "These are the 3 teams that we are going to face next. They're all quite strong. Also, Xiangnan's regional competition has ended. There's no doubt that Xiangnan is number 1 again. Moreover, they didn't send all their main players. It's obvious that they are very strong. Xiangnan." As long as this name was mentioned, the team's atmosphere would turn cold. That was the person they wanted to defeat the most. It had been 3 years. A whole 3 years. Because they had won before, their eyes drooped when they heard this name. It wasn't just Lin Feng and Yun Hu. Even the others were reminding themselves that this was their last chance. Their target was the national champion. Fatty's news probably gave everyone pressure. Fu Jiao watched as everyone started to get busy. Lin Feng's hand speed wasn't fast enough, so he was still practicing. And Feng Shang seemed to be doing something. He actually started to pedal on the World Channel, saying that he wanted to collect diamond shards, probably to make equipment. Christmas Eve. This was basically how Supreme Alliance spent their time. Perhaps this was how it was at this age. Love was never the only thing. Compared to love, it was more enviable to fight side by side with each other. The night sky outside the window was dark and gloomy. The smog in Jiang City had never dissipated. Fu Jiao was the one who drank the most water, because her throat felt uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because of this body. She didn't have this problem in the past. It was said that serious people were the most beautiful. It wasn't just this group of male gamers, even Yao Yao was the same. Everyone's computer screen was lit up. Fu Jiao sat in the middle with her companions on her left and right. She had never been like this before. Because of hackers. She never had friends. Hackers were so mysterious because of their aloofness. They existed, but in reality they had a different face. Even if they had family and friends, no one would know what these hackers did at night. So in essence, Fu Jiao was lonely. Except for Oshino. If it wasn't for that time in Tokyo, Fujio wouldn't be hiding things in her heart. On the day of her rebirth, it wasn't that she didn't want to contact Hoshino, but in the end she didn't. People had to look forward. This had always been her principle, compared to helping her do things that couldn't be exposed. Now Hoshino's identity was more beautiful. The clacking sound of the keyboard could be very hypnotic at times. When Fujio raised her eyes again, Lin Feng was already leaning on Yunhu's shoulder, and he was about to fall asleep. But the Almighty was sitting next to her. She didn't know when he had put on a pair of black-rimmed glasses, but that only made him look extremely handsome and intelligent. Probably because Fujio looked at him for too long. Chin Imo tilted his head. His dark eyes seemed to be smiling. Do I look good? Good. Fujio's peach blossom eyes seemed to be smiling. Brother Imo, looking at you makes me want to take you home. Does your stomach still hurt? Did you take the hot water bag I gave you? Chin Imo also knew that this guy's habit of flirting couldn't be changed. Looking at the young man's concerned expression, he raised his eyebrows and was about to get closer. Feng Yi came over with a big bag of takeaway. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit. Get up, there's supper and porridge to fight against the smog radiation. Porridge to fight against the smog radiation? What's that? Fujio tilted her head and asked Chin Imo. Lin Feng woke up with a start, and his expression was very bad. It's the dark cuisine cooked by Fox Feng himself. Hey. What are you hiding for, Lin Feng? Feng Yi pulled him over. Come, taste my love as a manager. With Lin Feng as a reference, Fujio very cleverly glanced at the porridge in the bag. All she saw was a green sticky substance. Chapter 479. The love supper brought by manager Feng successfully caused a lot of wailing. But it was really good for the body. According to him, the porridge was made with celery leaves and spinach leaves, and there were also simmered mint leaves in it. After hearing that recipe, Fujio felt that she should keep Feng Yi away from the kitchen. Baby Feng, next time stop your brother, do you hear me? Feng Shang had just been forced by his brother to finish the porridge. With a bitter face he said, I can't stop him. He likes to cook. Fujio. An esports agent actually liked to cook. The main reason was that the food he made tasted terrible. Why did he like to cook? But Feng Yi was very confident. The taste is good, right? Fujio thought to herself that no one had died yet. However, Lin Feng's reaction was bigger. He rushed into the bathroom right after he finished drinking. Only the Almighty was spared. He only said 3 words to Feng Yi, my stomach hurts. Feng Yi's expression was indescribable. Shameless, too shameless, using the same excuse so many times. Chin Imo, on the other hand, had a strong aura and was very calm. Feng Yi felt that the Almighty was too shameless and didn't say anything else. He started to talk about the main point of today's visit. The second match of the regional competition will begin tomorrow afternoon. This time there won't be any time to rest. Other than testing everyone's skills, there's also a requirement on your stamina. To prevent eye inflammation, other than the regular medication, I will be following you and cooking porridge for you. As for the rest, I believe you've heard from Fatty about Xiangnan's results. 2 of their main players haven't been on the field. It's best if Little Spade and young Master Qin don't play as much as possible. They'll be the secret weapons against Xiangnan in the National League because no one knows how strong Xiangnan's lineup is. My idol and almighty Qin aren't going to fight? Feng Shang asked worriedly. What if we lose? Feng Yi glanced at his brother. If we lose like this, we won't be able to win in the National League. Okay. Fujio's voice was clear. She stood up with one hand in her pocket and a smile on her face. Feng Yi knew that Fujio understood what he meant. The reason was simple. Even if there were experts in the regionals, this was just a regionals. Many teams were saving their strength for the National League. For example, Xiangnan. It had won the top 3 in the regional competition without its main force. Without Fujio and Chin Imo, Supreme Alliance would lose. The difference was already very obvious. Indeed, there was no need for him to participate in the national competition. Everyone thought of this relationship. Especially Yunhu, who was smart and had the bravery of a soldier. Don't worry, we can win. Yunhu is right. Feng Yi held onto his suit jacket. After the regional competition, it'll be Supreme Alliance's anniversary celebration. I've already bought tickets to the ski resort and a hotel suite. If we win beautifully, we'll spend the new year at the hot spring villa. There'll also be the masquerade ball that you've been looking forward to. Hearing the words masquerade party, the team members were excited. There was only one person. No one knew what Lin Feng was thinking. He clenched his fist and said fiercely, "This year I must not draw the worst lot." "You need to draw lots for a masquerade ball?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Lin Feng wanted to say something to the youth. Suddenly Qin Mo's eyes flashed. He pulled the youngster's collar over and said faintly, "Continue practicing your hand speed." Chapter 480. The next day. The regional competition continued. This time, Supreme Alliance's opponent was the former top 3 team in the province, Outyin team. This was the reason why Fatty said they wouldn't have an easy time. At the same time, they were also a friendly team of Yunzhong. In terms of strength, they were indeed no match for Yunzhong team. But everyone knew that the previous match could be won so easily. First, it was because Yunzhong team underestimated their opponent. Second, it was because both Fu Jiu and Qin Mo were on the field. Today's match. Those two weren't in the lineup. The 1v1 began. Everyone thought it would be Spade Z, and even the shoutcaster thought that Supreme Alliance should continue to win with the momentum of the previous match. Unexpectedly, it was Yin Weiyao who came for the 1v1. Outyin saw this and laughed coldly. "What do you mean? Are you looking down on us?" "He thinks he's great just because he beat Yunzhong team. Monkey, let these people know that our Outyin team isn't someone they can treat like this. It's ridiculous for an old general to take the lead." "No problem, it's a piece of cake to deal with this uncle." Just like what Feng Shang had been worried about, this match wasn't going to be easy. Yin Weiyao didn't make any progress other than taking a kill in the first match. Fu Jiu looked up at the time on the screen and frowned. "Uncle, we have to end this match as soon as possible." Because the opponent was an assassin-type player who was good at sneak attacks and fast, the longer the match dragged on, the harder it would be for Yin Weiyao. Fu Jiu's speculation was verified when Yin Weiyao lost his first life. The opponent was good at stealing towers and attacking all the way. In order not to end the match early, Yin Weiyao could only return to the city to heal. That kind of situation made people's hearts ache. Sometimes, the people in the match couldn't see it as clearly as the bystanders. Was Supreme Alliance really going to lose this time? Just as people were thinking about this, Yin Weiyao jumped over the tower and killed his opponent, returning to the city with low HP. Fu Jiu saw this and her eyes lit up. Uncle realized it. Realized what? Feng Shang didn't understand. But it was obvious that Yin Weyao's fighting style was different. He didn't attack the tower but hid in the bushes and began to hunt. Because his opponent was fast, Yin Weiyao first stunned him, then killed him, turning the situation around. This 1v1 match was without a doubt the longest one of them all. In the end, Yin Weyao's HP was dangerously low. His opponent had used up his last life. If they were any later, Supreme Alliance's city would have fallen. It could only be said that it was really hard to tell who would win and who would lose in this competition. But according to the rules, Supreme Alliance won. Yin Weiyao removed his headphones and walked towards his teammates. Fu Jiu glanced sideways and passed him a cigarette. "Thanks for your hard work. It's important to have a good start." Yin Weiyao took the cigarette but didn't light it. He held it in his mouth. "I wish I was as young as you guys." Fu Jiu laughed and said, "There are benefits to being old. For example, you have rich experience and can adapt to changing situations. I believe this is why the Almighty asked you to fight the 1v1. With that, Yin Weiyao glanced at Qin Mo, his voice low. "We have a good captain." "Yes, we have a good captain. He wasn't like the other teams who looked down on veterans and looked down on rookies. He gave everyone enough trust. He treated his teammates equally. This was the Almighty." Chapter 481. With Yin Weiyao leading the way, no matter how difficult the following matches were, no one was worried. He fought steadily without underestimating his opponent or having stage fright. The shoutcaster added, "North of Yin Mountain's victory is very important. With his persistence, Supreme Alliance's aura has returned." "That's right." Another shoutcaster laughed. "It seems like even an old general has to meet a captain who knows how to use people." Everyone understood. Supreme Alliance's order of appearance had always been arranged by Qin Mo. Someone once said that when Qin Mo wasn't in the preparation area, he was Supreme Alliance's coach. But when he wore the headphones and operated the computer, it was another role. Supreme Alliance was able to keep their composure. A large part of the reason was because the person sitting there was Qin Mo. Next was the 2v2. Shui Yaoyao didn't even know how she moved the mouse. All she wanted was to kill another person or attack another defense tower. When it was over, she realized that she had really won. Her fingers were still trembling, and her heart was still beating. For the first time without Highness Jio's help, she won. In the distance, Fu Jio, who was in the audience seats, curved her lips into a smile and mouthed, "Beautiful." Perhaps this was what they were after with their disdainful and mocking gazes. Esports taught us to be brave. And friends taught us to trust. The celebratory atmosphere had never been so intense. As the manager, Feng Yi watched this scene with a smile. Except for his own brother, Feng Shang. What he saw was more about that group of guys getting along. Who would have thought? Some of them didn't even know what esports was a month ago. But now, every single one of them was a trustworthy player. Perhaps this year they could really win the national championship. Brother. Feng Shang ran over with a flushed face. Did you see that? I won. Feng Yi ruffled his hair. I saw it. Not bad. Take advantage of this momentum and continue. Okay. His eyes were filled with yearning as if he could see the future shining. Fu Jio hit the back of the chair with one hand, the corner of her mouth lifted. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly looked to the left. Qin Mo lifted his brows. What? Nothing. Fu Jio's eyes were still on the emergency exit. Was she seeing things? How could that person be here? Little Spade, why are you still sitting there? Hurry up and come down to celebrate. Lin Feng interrupted Fu Jio's thoughts. Fu Jio curled her lips up into a smile. She held onto the railing with one hand and jumped up. Her action was so cool that the surrounding girls almost fainted. Lin Feng was stunned and gave him a thumbs up. Good skills. Qin Mo glanced over and then looked towards the emergency exit. It was empty. There was nothing there. What was this guy looking at just now? The regional competition lasted for 5 consecutive days. As a dark horse, Supreme Alliance won all the way. This move was a slap in the face to the analysts who had made predictions on Weibo. But none of this mattered to Fu Jio. The key was to draw lots for the masquerade ball. Come on. You should wish yourself good luck first. Lin Feng held a bamboo tube with a solemn expression. The bamboo tube was filled with wooden sticks. Fu Jio thought to herself that it was just a masquerade party, and she didn't need to wish him good luck. She was so handsome that she could play any role, right? Lin Feng said meaningfully, "Don't blame me for not reminding you." Fu Jio didn't care. She picked the one in the middle with a faint smile. Then she flipped it over. There were only 2 words on it. Cross-dressing, asterisk 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 aside, no charge beyond 1,000 words. It's been 3.5 months since I started writing. Thank you, beauties, for accompanying me for so long. I've encountered many things during this period, such as plagiarism, reposting, and other infringements, as well as the incomprehension in the comments section. I'm lucky to have you all with me all the way. Chapter 482. Female cross-dressing? How could there be such a strange word? Fu Jio raised her eyebrows heavily, feeling that there was something wrong with her eyes. Wrong draw, I'll draw again. What do you mean wrong draw? It's this one. Lin Feng smiled widely. Little Spade, you're so lucky. In the past, your brother was always the luckiest. This year it's your turn. What did he mean? Was it really cross-dressing? Fu Jio's mouth froze. What kind of masquerade ball would require people to wear cross-dressing? My condolences. Lin Feng seemed to see himself in the past. He reached out his left hand and patted Fu Jio's shoulder. Child, you're still young. But think about it, how many men have the chance to wear cross-dressing, especially so openly? Be happy. Fu Jio looked sideways. Master Lin. Go ahead. Fu Jio chuckled. When you're comforting me, can you keep your molars in first? It's too obvious that you're gloating. Lin Feng was still laughing, not caring about what Fu Jio said. After comforting her, he jumped over to the team members, and his handsome face was full of joy. Guess. What did Little Spade draw? Shui Yaoyao held her face and her eyes were full of yearning. Vampire aristocracy? With Highness Jio's skin tone and silver hair, if she wore a 19th century evening gown, she would definitely amaze everyone. Feng Shang was also trying hard to think. A demon deacon? No, neither. Lin Feng shook his finger. Guess again. Yun, who walked over at this time, and his voice was normal. Seeing how happy you are, could it be that Little Spade drew the lot you drew last year? Dahu, you're so smart. Lin Feng pointed at him and said in a loud voice, That's right, it's that lucky draw cross-dressing. Cross-dressing? In an instant. Not only the old team members but also Feng Shang and Yin Wuyao. Both Feng Shang and Yin Wuyao looked in Fu Jio's direction immediately. He wanted to smoke a cigarette, but because he was too shocked, he did not even hold the cigarette in his mouth and dropped it on the ground. There was not a single person who wasn't shocked. Fujio still wanted to say something, but when she looked up, she saw that the Almighty had just finished dealing with the company's matters and was standing in front of the door in a suit. His body was excessively slender, and he probably heard Lin Feng's words. He leaned against the wall, raised his eyebrows at Fujio and smiled faintly. Cross-dressing? Fujio wanted to open her mouth again. Lin Feng interrupted her decisively. Little Spade, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to find excuses like you're not feeling well, you have something to do tomorrow, or your stomach hurts. I used these excuses last year. Just accept your fate. Our brothers won't laugh at you. Fujio. Can't you be more expressive when you say that? However, this time Lin Feng blocked all the ways she could use to escape. She had to think of a way to reject this alternative masquerade party. But the Almighty didn't give the young man a chance. His gaze was indifferent. Tomorrow, everyone must attend as requested. If you don't come, you'll have to bear the consequences. Captain is right. Attend as requested. Lin Feng patted Fujio's shoulder again. Fujio finally experienced the feeling that the Almighty had when he wanted to throw someone out of the window. Shui Yaoyao stood at the side and her eyes were full of worry. Cross-dressing was really dangerous for Highness Jiu. Chapter 483. Lin Feng blocked with his hand. Yaoyao, you can't do that. Our Supreme Alliance has rules. You have to follow whatever you draw, right, Captain? Hearing that, Fujio looked at Chinamo with a serious look, which meant, Almighty, it's time to show your brother's true colors. Chinamo looked at the young man for a moment. Just when Fujio thought things would change for the better, the man smiled. The man smiled, looking especially handsome. Yes. Fujio. What happened to Brother Khan? Chinamo slowly took in the youngster's gloomy expression, then looked at Shui Yaoyao, who was anxious to help the youngster out. His original intention of letting the youngster off the hook was reduced by a lot. He took a step forward, his voice calm but oppressive. Perform well and I'll personally pick you up tomorrow. Don't even think about running away, understand? Did he mean that she had to participate? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Just in case, she gave him a heads up first. You can choose not to run away, but Brother Mo, let me tell you, I'm not like Lin Feng. I've never had the experience of dressing up as a girl. Don't worry, I won't despise you. Qin Mo's tone made Fujio realize that she couldn't avoid dressing up as a girl. Lin Feng waited for Chinamo to finish and immediately shouted, Little Spade, I've only done it twice, okay? 2 times isn't considered experience. Fujio said casually, no wonder you're the team beauty. As a man who thought he was, Lin Feng touched his heart, calmed down and smiled handsomely. Little Spade, I can totally understand why you don't like everyone. That's how I felt back then. So I understand how unpleasant it is for a man to be forced to be a prostitute. I know, to be forced to be a woman. But I still need to provide you with some props. What props? Fujio unwrapped a lollipop and held it in her mouth casually. Aren't they just costumes? Lin Feng looked at her as if she had never experienced the big world. He lowered his voice and said, some props are more important than costumes. Fujio said casually. Now there were only 2 words in her mind. Cross-dressing, cross-dressing. Why would she care about props? Hey, don't, oh. Lin Feng lowered his head. Give me your address, I'll get someone to send the props to your house. Listen to Senior, at this masquerade ball, the more you look like yourself, the less people will be able to recognize you. The chances of losing face will also be lower. Fujio chuckled. Brother Lin, who doesn't know that I'm going to dress up as a girl after your announcement? The members of the team don't count. The main thing is that there will be some fans attending the masquerade ball. Lin Feng leaned over. Don't say that I don't want to teach you. When the time comes, just insist that you're a fan, understand? So it could be like this. It seemed like her brother Lin was also someone who could provide ideas at times. Furthermore, it was a masquerade ball and they could wear masks. Even if he wore women's clothing, he could still hide it. The more Fujio thought about it, the more her smile deepened. Brother Lin is indeed reliable. This is a great idea. Of course, who is your brother Lin? Lin Feng also looks good when he's proud. That's why these props are especially important. Whether or not a disguise depends entirely on them. What are these props referring to? Fujio had a bad feeling about this. Chapter 484. 34D. Collagen Water Ball. Chest. When these words were put together, anyone could guess what they meant. Fujio's fingers paused. Then she jumped down from the wooden table and sucked on her lollipop, looking like a handsome hedonist. Brother Lin, I just want to ask you one thing. When you bought these things, did no one look at you as a pervert? Lin Feng's face turned red as he denied. Yunhu said lightly, no, but uncle and auntie found out and thought he had a fetish for cross-dressing. Fujio. That was worse than being thought of as a pervert. With this relationship, Fujio made a wise choice. I refuse to accept these props. Refuse? Lin Feng smiled when he heard that. Little spade, you can't do this. Where's your sincerity in cross-dressing? Don't try to fool us with some pants. After the ball ends tomorrow, we have to send photos to the team group. There's a small gathering after midnight. You can't wear something that doesn't pass. Fujio smiled after hearing that. Don't worry, I'll definitely pass. Not to mention that she was a woman, she was good at disguising. Since it was a masquerade ball, it wasn't a problem for her. Chinamo had been on the phone. Now that he was done, he glanced at the youngster and raised his eyebrows. So confident? He thought that this guy would beg him. This way he could make some corresponding conditions such as staying away from girls, especially Shui Yao Yao, and keeping an appropriate distance. But it turned out that a certain someone was not enlightened in some aspects. He was quite happy when someone asked to change the lot. He didn't think of asking him for help. Since that was the case, he wanted to see how a certain someone would hide in cross-dressing. At that time, Shinamo didn't realize that he was like this because he cared. But every time he saw Fujio and Shui Yao Yao looking at each other, his eyes would turn cold, night fell, and fog started to form in Jiang City again. It was better in the city. Once they were out of the city, in the direction of the high-speed rail station, people were walking in a haze. Everyone was wearing masks as if they were filming a Resident Evil movie. Among them stood a tall and slender figure. He was the only one who wasn't wearing a mask, so he was particularly eye-catching. His handsome facial features were exposed outside, so the people who got on the bus couldn't help but take another look at him. That person was holding a phone with one hand as if he was talking on the phone. His voice could be vaguely heard. So she was from Tokyo. What a good temperament. Haven't you been learning languages recently? Can you understand what he is saying? Probably. He seems to have said that he's going to stay here for a while and won't be going back for a while. He said that he has something to do and will meet here? What are you talking about? Did you hear wrong? No, that's what he said. And it sounds like he's looking for someone, huh? Wait, where's the handsome guy? The contralto voice was still echoing in his ears, but Hoshino tossed it further and further away until he couldn't hear it anymore. That's right, that figure was Hoshino. Chapter 485. Hoshino narrowed his eyes. No matter what, he still felt that all the verified accounts posting the same message for no reason was very similar to Z's style. And he had already inquired about the hackers in China. So far, no organization had taken responsibility for this, which meant that they didn't do it. As a result, his suspicions deepened. You could say that he was lying to himself or that he was delusional, but this definitely had something to do with Z. But where on earth was that person? Linqing? Baoqing? Jincheng? Jiang City? A province in China was bigger than the capital of Tokyo, not to mention such a densely populated city. It wasn't easy to find one person. So far, he only had one clue, and that was that Z was very likely in the esports circle. Otherwise, she wouldn't have intervened in this matter. So he wouldn't give up. Maybe he should go to the national competition. It shouldn't be long. Hoshino looked up at the foggy city. On the way from the Qin group to the Fu family's house, Shui Yao Yao didn't go home immediately. Instead, she walked with Fujio. Your Highness Jiao, are you really going to dress as a girl? Will it be bad for you? Shui Yao Yao's worries weren't unreasonable. After all, Fujio still had secrets to keep. Fujio had one hand in her pocket. She was smiling, but she looked very cunning. It's not good, but since it's a masquerade ball, it won't be bad to the point of danger. I'll send you a message and you can cover for me. Lin Feng said a lot. As long as you dress up well, it will save a lot of trouble. What do you need me to do? Shui Yao Yao asked nervously. Fujio rubbed her chin and said, try to divert everyone's attention. You can bring a friend with a similar figure. He should be able to buy some time for me. We're not going together? Shui Yao Yao didn't understand. Won't that help you? How could she cover for him if they were too far away? Fujio smiled faintly and her eyes sparkled. She said slowly, as if this wasn't the first time she had done something like this. No, disguise is all about the first impression. Everyone in the team will definitely think that I will go with you. After all, this is my first time wearing women's clothes. No man will look natural in women's clothes for the first time, so he will definitely find a companion. Lin Feng was probably recognized because he was with Yunhu everywhere he went in the past. That's why we'll enter separately and split up the time. The person you brought with you should be studied by them for a while. Shui Yaoyao didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that when the word disguise was mentioned, the young man in the night looked like a vampire noble who had just woken up from the darkness. He was mysterious and evil, his side profile was handsome and fair, and even his whole body was covered with a darkness that could make people fall. It was as if the young man was born this way. On the contrary, she usually hid far too many things. Why do I have such a feeling? Shui Yaoyao looked at Fu Jiu in front of her in a daze. She didn't know what to say. The young man noticed her gaze. He turned his head and smiled, which was as warm as the spring sun. Chapter 486. But there was one thing that was rather strange. Highness Jiu seemed to be very good at disguising himself. Even some people could guess what they were thinking. This was too smart. Could a hacker be this smart? Fu Jiu knew that Shui Yaoyao was confused, but she didn't plan to say anything. After the National League ended, the Fu family would undergo another change of ownership. When that time came, she would definitely return to the Fifth Avenue after settling everything here. It was not suitable for anyone to know about her past. She wasn't sure if it was because of the shadow she saw today, but Fu Jiu was thinking too much about the past. She was different from everyone else in the Supreme Alliance, and she couldn't rely on her game to support herself. She had her own beliefs, and that belief could only continue after she regained her identity as a hacker. Therefore she would leave this place sooner or later. Even though he was reluctant, he had to do what he had to do. Fu Jiu looked in Shui Yaoyao's direction again, reached out her hand and rubbed her head with a smile. Don't worry, it's just women's clothing, it's not like I've never worn it before. What about Almighty Qin? Shui Yaoyao said in a low voice, I feel that Almighty Qin's observation skills are too strong. Fu Jiu thought to herself that he was more than just strong, he was not just a little bit stronger. Tomorrow I'll find an excuse to go there first. As long as you help me stall for time, I'll send a few pictures to the team chat. If we don't meet face to face, it should be much less dangerous. Fu Jiu's analysis was right. At this time the entire team was thinking about how to catch her tomorrow. With Lin Feng leading the way, he said, I have experience doing this. When the time comes, you must keep an eye on Sister Yaoyao. Those two have a good relationship, so they will definitely appear together. Sister Yaoyao is easy to recognize, understand? Understood. Every member of the team was in high spirits. Every year at the New Year's Eve ball, they looked forward to this moment the most. Yunhu didn't say anything, but he found it strange. Why did Little Spade pick the cross-dressing one out of so many? He reached for the bamboo tube on Lin Feng's table and casually took one. There were only 2 words written on the wooden stick, women's clothing. He smoked another one. Still no. Yunhu didn't take the 3rd one. Instead he turned to Lin Feng. Who gave you this bamboo tube? It wasn't that he didn't suspect Lin Feng, but he didn't think Lin Feng was smart enough to do such a thing. As expected, Lin Feng was still laughing. What? Oh, it's a bamboo tube. Captain gave it to me after the draw. Yunhu instantly understood. There were only 3 words in his mind. No wonder. He lifted his eyes and looked at the figure who was still smoking. Their captain had a calm expression on his face, as if he didn't care at all that someone knew that he had done something to the bamboo tube. It had to be said that the captain's shamelessness was growing with each passing year. Subsequently, Qin Mo walked over and tossed a cigarette to Yunhu. The two of them found a quiet place and puffed out smoke rings. Qin Mo's voice was calm and emotionless. You should keep the bamboo tube to yourself. Yunhu had always been a man of few words, but at this moment he couldn't help but ask, Captain, do you want to see Spade cross-dressing? If that was the case, it wasn't impossible for Spade to chase after someone. No. Qin Mo flicked the cigarette butt and said slowly, I just thought that guy would come and beg me. Chapter 487. Lin Feng was still shouting over there. Oh yes, I have to hurry home and pack the props for Little Spade. I want to see it as a gift for him as soon as he comes tomorrow. The New Year's masquerade. Everyone seemed to be looking forward to it. Besides the members of the team, there were also some fans online. There weren't many opportunities to get such a chance. Only their true fans would be invited to the banquet. And all the expenses of the ball would be provided by the Qin group. As long as you were there, you could celebrate the new year with your esports idol. This had always been a special case for the Qin group. Of course, there would be live broadcasts on online platforms. This was good for the development of the Supreme Alliance and was also a benefit for the fans. Everyone was happy to see it. But there was one thing. Almighty Qin might not necessarily appear at the masquerade. After all, he had to attend many business meetings on New Year's Eve. But even this couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the fans who wanted to participate in this activity. He might not necessarily appear, but there was still a chance. Moreover, someone said that even if Almighty Qin didn't appear, there was still Big Spade. So the atmosphere of online registration was unusually high. When the deadline ended at midnight, the number of registrations had exceeded 1 million. But not everyone could come to the scene. They also had to be screened. Manager Feng had been busy dealing with this matter. How could Han Susu and her group miss such a ball? She first spent a lot of money, but because she didn't pay attention to the team, she wasn't selected. In the end, she found Feng Yi through her brother and asked for 3 tickets. Feng Yi politely refused at first, but seeing that Han Susu's attitude was more extreme, he didn't want to agitate her because of these 2 tickets. Han Susu had been spoiled since she was young and couldn't tolerate being rejected. In her impression, if she spent money, the other party should agree and like her. Han Susu was still a student. It wasn't that students weren't good. It was just that some were more troublesome than adults when faced with it. Because they could turn from a fan to an anti-fan at any time. Not a fan to a fan. And people like Han Susu hadn't fully matured their values. Feng Yi didn't say much to her. Instead, he said to her brother, "Young Master Han, you know that our ball is a celebration for the Supreme Alliance. We want to celebrate the new year with our fans. If possible, please be quiet when Miss Han arrives." Feng Yi's attitude had always been gentle. But those words made Han Susu's brother blush. What his sister had been doing recently was indeed a little out of line. "Don't worry, I'll go with her." "That's good. Don't go overboard. It's not the right time for Supreme Alliance to start a feud." Han Susu didn't realize her own problem. After leaving the Qin Group Club, she sneered. "Although the Feng family isn't bad, it's still a business. Brother, why are you so polite to Feng Yi? He's just a worker for Brother Qin." Han Susu's brother once again wondered why he had such a sister. He took a deep breath and said, "Susu, if you still think this way, give me the ticket. You don't have to go to the masquerade ball." Chapter 488. Han Feng knew his sister's personality. She cared about her reputation, and if she didn't keep her promise to her friends, she would definitely go and bother their parents. So he handed the ticket over and said in a low voice, "Be a good girl and don't cause trouble." Got it, got it. I'm going to see my idol. I'm so happy. How could I cause trouble?" After Han Susu got the ticket, she smiled from ear to ear. "My 2 friends like Brother Qin very much, so there won't be any problems." Han Feng thought about it carefully and agreed. A masquerade ball with masks on their faces and everyone celebrating the new year together, there wouldn't be any problems. "Alright, let's stop talking. I'm going to inform our friends and let them think about how to dress up more beautifully tomorrow." Han Susu was still young, so she always had endless enthusiasm for these things. The Han family only had 1 daughter, so of course they would let her have her way. Han Feng only called the bodyguards over and told them to keep an eye on Miss tomorrow night. The darkness of the night grew thicker. After Fu Jiu got home, she threw her school bag and went straight to the basement of the villa. There was a side door there. It had only appeared in the Fu family after she was reborn. She had basically made this thing herself. Although it took a long time, at least it could be considered a temporary secret room. The door didn't have a handle, so to push it open, one needed to turn the dim light on the side. The secret room wasn't big, but it had everything. There were 3 computers in it, each with high specs. There was only 1 keyboard, but it was connected to an LCD monitor. Aside from these, there was a row of skateboards and some hats. Fu Jiu walked in with one hand in her pocket as if she was back home. She tapped on the keyboard. A letter appeared on the screen immediately, Z. As the LCD monitor lit up, all the lights in the room lit up. At this moment, people could see clearly that there was a rack in the innermost part of the room. There were all kinds of uniforms hanging on the rack. There were men's clothes, women's clothes, trousers, and long skirts. They even had janitorial uniforms and express delivery uniforms. Fu Jiu had a lollipop in her mouth. She skated over on the skateboard and stopped in front of the rack. "Masquerade ball? Black it is then." The youngster raised her eyebrows, and with a flick of her finger, a pure black muslin skirt was pulled out by her. Since she wasn't wearing it, she couldn't even make out the style of the dress. She could only vaguely make out the material. After picking out the clothes, Fujio bent over and pressed some kind of mechanism. The wooden board above her head popped out with a bang. It was a small hidden compartment with more than a dozen mirrors inside. There were sunglasses, myopia glasses, and even cosmetic contact lenses. Apart from these, there were also rows of wigs. The wig was long and short, black and yellow, and it was very smooth and lifelike. Normal people wouldn't have these things in their homes. But Fujio was different. She is a hacker. In essence, she had never changed. The identity of a high school student on the surface was sometimes easier for her to hide. When she knew that she had to deal with Fu Zhongyi and the mistress, she had been preparing everything. This was so that when they encountered certain cases, they could take action whenever they wanted. It was just that he didn't expect. After his rebirth, the first time he used these things was for a masquerade ball? Fujio shook her head and smiled. That lazy look of hers would probably make the girls feel that she was super cool. She randomly picked out a wig and a bracelet, and left the secret room with the black skirt. Chapter 489. 9 o'clock. The light in Jiang City was still covered by layers of haze. Qin Xiaodong's roar came from downstairs. What is this? What are these? Young master. Fujio was indeed woken up by her little butler. After she opened her eyes, she was still yawning. Her silver hair was messy, which only made her look sexy. And? Qin Xiaodong quickly came back to his senses and put the things in front of the young man. He said earnestly, "Young man, I've never given you any advice on how you've played in the past. But today I'm going to say something. What are these?" How would I know? Fujio covered herself with the blanket and wanted to sleep again. Qin Xiaodong was very anxious. The recipient is you. Fortunately, I signed for it. What if Madame saw it? She will definitely be sad that she raised young master like this. Fujio continued to yawn. She changed her posture to block out some of the noise. Qin Xiaodong let out a long sigh, hugged the cardboard box, and sat on the chair next to him. Young master, I know you won't like what I'm saying, and I know what you're thinking. For Almighty Qin, you're even playing your least favorite game so well, so deep down, you must really wish you were a girl. It's not easy for gay guys like you to walk down the road, but you can't be like this. Where did you buy such a dirty thing? Dirty? Fujio finally opened her eyes. She reached out and rubbed her silver hair. Finally, she raised her eyebrows at Qin Xiaodong, looking like a handsome man who woke up early in the morning. Give it to me first, let me see. You want to inspect the goods? Qin Xiaodong said angrily, although it's very realistic, I have to give it a bad review regardless of whether it's good or bad. Tell me, which Taobao shop did you buy it from? I'm going to report it. Fujio held the side of her face and said faintly, I'll say it again, hand it over. Seeing his young master like this, Qin Xiaodong felt goosebumps all over his body. He stretched out his paw and handed the box over. Fujio frowned as soon as she saw what was inside. Young master. Qin Xiaodong still wanted to say something. Fujio lifted the quilt and stood up. Lin Feng bought it, so I just accepted it for him. Really? Qin Xiaodong was very doubtful. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Do you want me to call Lin Feng and ask him? Then it's true. Qin Xiaodong shook his head. I didn't expect Linda to have such a hobby. Fujio smiled faintly. Keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone else. Don't worry. Qin Xiaodong held it in. I'll try not to say anything. Fujio didn't believe that he wouldn't say anything. In less than a day, No. 1 Middle School's Chieba forum would be filled with Xiao Dongzi's gossip posts. Therefore, from a certain perspective, Fujio did it on purpose. Brother Lin wanted to trick her, and she tricked him in the end. This was also an act of kindness on her part. Wait. Qin Xiaodong's eyes were sharp. Young man, what's up with that black gauze dress on your chair? And the wigs? Fujio turned around and let out a long sigh. I didn't want to talk about this. Secret? Qin Xiaodong pricked up his ears and repeated, I promise I won't tell anyone. Chapter 490. Hearing that, Qin Xiaodong murmured, Linda's taste is so heavy. Only Big Spade would yield to a perfect trap. Qin Xiaodong put down the wooden box immediately. Young master, get up quickly. Breakfast is ready. It's on the table. I'll go down first. The feeling of wanting to share a secret with a good friend was uncontrollable. He swore that he would only tell his good friend and no one else. Fujio knew what Qin Xiaodong was going to do when she saw him like that. She curled her lips and smiled slowly. Then she tilted her head and looked at the pure black chiffon dress with her deep eyes. Her slender fingers slowly unbuttoned her white shirt, revealing her fair skin and the layers of bandages wrapped around her chest. If Qin Emo saw her like this, he would definitely not treat this person as his little brother anymore. But how could Fujio expose herself so easily? She looked tall and slender before. After removing all the bandages, her waist was very slim, revealing a very beautiful waistline. Especially with a pair of long legs. Fair, tall and green like jade. That kind of figure not only men but also women would like it. Your Highness Jiao, are you there? A voice came from outside the door. Fujio heard it was Shui Yaoyao and said in a lazy voice, "Come in." She casually draped something over her body and sat on the wooden chair. Opposite the wooden chair was a vanity mirror. The two of them had agreed yesterday that Shui Yaoyao would come to the Fu house first today to create the illusion that the person beside her was Fujio. Shui Yaoyao had imagined His Highness Jiao's female appearance countless times, but after seeing it with her own eyes, those imaginations were instantly destroyed. Because she realized that no matter how she imagined it, it was not as stunning as what she saw. The woman sitting on the wooden chair stepped on the wooden floor with her bare feet. That posture was very lazy, but her legs were too beautiful. Especially her. She didn't seem to be wearing any clothes underneath. She was just wearing a dark chiffon, and her fair back was exposed. Her curves were so beautiful that one could only think of one word, vixen. Yes. Like a fairy walking out of the darkness, every inch of her body was different from that of a mortal, white like porcelain. Ever since Fujio supported her face with one hand and let Shui Yaoyao close the door, it became unstoppable. You. Shui Yaoyao wanted to say that even if Almighty Qin saw her like this, he probably wouldn't be angry that she was hiding a secret. But on second thought, Almighty Qin seemed to be too resistant to beauty and didn't like being lied to. She wasn't sure if Almighty Qin would be angry. But there was one thing. Her Highness Jiao was already so beautiful just by looking like this. If she were to wear women's clothes, Yaoyao chuckled. So beautiful. Fujio turned her eyes to the side, and her languid elegance was laced with indifference. It's all right. After all, I'm too handsome, so don't feel inferior. Shui Yaoyao couldn't help but want to laugh. Sure enough, no matter what Highness Jiao changed into, he was still Highness Jiao. After locking the door, come over and sit down. There's something for you beside the chair. Take it out and have a look. Fujio raised her eyebrows at Shui Yaoyao. Chapter 491. This is a New Year's gift. Fujio chuckled. She sat lazily in the veil. How can a girl attend a masquerade party without a long dress? You've lost a lot of weight these days, so white suits you very well. Although Shui Yaoyao hadn't seen many expensive things, she could tell from the fabric that the dress wasn't cheap. His Highness Jiao always seemed to be like this. He was more thoughtful than anyone else. He brought more warmth to others than anyone else. Thank you. Shui Yaoyao put away the gift box with a big smile on her face. She thought that it was a blessing to have met this person in her lifetime. Fujio was still supporting the side of her face with a wicked smile. She was as beautiful as ever. The masquerade party would start at 6:30 p.m. to prevent the youngster from escaping. After the shareholders' meeting at 2 p.m., Qin Emo took out his phone, unlocked the screen and dialed someone's number. It was a pity that no one picked up the first call. Another half an hour passed. Qin Emo dialed the second number. This time someone picked up the call. A female voice came through. Is this Almighty Qin? Qin Mo's fingers paused when he heard that voice. Shui Yaoyao? It's me. Shui Yaoyao didn't understand why her scalp would go numb every time she faced Almighty Qin. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed. He gestured to Secretary Liang, who was about to sign the document, to wait. Then he walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and said in a low voice, "Let Fujio answer the phone." Even through the phone, Shui Yaoyao could tell that Almighty Qin wasn't in a good mood. His Highness Jiao is taking a shower, so he asked me to answer it for him. Qin Mo's dark eyes turned colder, and even his voice lost all warmth. Where are you? Taking a shower at this time? Hotel. Thinking of the word hotel, Qin Mo's hand almost crumpled the document in his hand. At Fu's house. Shui Yaoyao explained, it's the first time His Highness Jiao wears women's clothes, so there are many things he doesn't understand. We have to dress up later. It was His Highness Jiao's idea for her to answer the phone. She wanted everyone in Almighty Qin to have the illusion that they would always be together, on the top floor of the Qin group. Secretary Liang looked at the tall and straight figure in front of him and felt the chills slowly dissipate. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The hostility emitted by the CEO just now was really frightening. It was as if he would destroy this office in the next second if he got any news. No one knew what happened to make the CEO like this. Fortunately, he was feeling better now. However, it was only a little better. There wasn't a hint of a smile in Qin Mo's eyes. After he showers, get him to call me back. All right. Shui Yaoyao hung up the phone, patted her chest and said to the young man sitting in front of her, talking to the Almighty is too stressful. Fu Jiu smiled faintly. You'll get used to it. Call your friends over. You guys go first and leave through my side. When I'm done, we'll leave from the back. Then the Almighty's phone number? Shui Yaoyao reminded. Fu Jiu looked up at the time. I'll be back in 10 minutes. In the president's office. Qin Mo glanced at the reflection of the traffic outside the window. His thin lips curled up and he smiled coldly. Shower? Chapter 492. Qin Mo's beautiful eyebrows furrowed. Coldness, forbearance, impatience. And the suffocating feeling in his heart made him want to pull off his tie subconsciously. However, it was the end of the year. All the big companies were really busy. Even though it was New Year's Eve, some ordinary employees had holidays. The real CEO of a company had the most social engagements at this time. The higher the position, the more so. Secretary Liang was afraid that his CEO's mood would sink further, so he immediately said, CEO Qin, you have an appointment to attend. Cancel it. Two very indifferent words. Qin Mo reached out and picked up the jacket on the back of the chair. Secretary Liang said in a low voice, I can't cancel it, it's the in-family. Qin Mo paused, gradually recovering his composure. My grandfather is back? Yes, he's back for the new year. He wants you to go over. Many people knew that Qin Mo was a young master from the military, but they didn't know that he was the in-family's only grandson. The in-family in the world really controlled a lot of economic lifelines. And the old man didn't come back often. Qin Mo glanced at his phone again. Go to the in-family. Yes. Time passed slowly. Qin Mo received a call from the youngster. But he was about to hang up after saying a few words with a chuckle. Qin Mo sat in the back seat of the Hummer, his eyes indifferent. When did you get into the habit of letting others answer your phone for you? I can't help it, I was busy just now. Fu Jiu gave a half-truth. Qin Mo chuckled, not at all happy. He said in a pleasant voice, busy taking a shower? If you are so willing to take a shower in front of others, I'll let you take a shower in front of me later, understand? Fu Jiu imagined that scene and said decisively, I'm actually very conservative. I can see that. You confess to others so easily, you are indeed very conservative. Fu Jiu? Almighty, isn't this already over? He listened to the pause on the other side of the phone. Qin Mo could also imagine the youngster's slightly depressed expression. The coldness on his thin lips finally dissipated a little, and he began to talk business. I'll pick you up after 6, I have something to do here. Speaking of this, if Brother Mo is busy, you don't have to pick me up. I'll go with Yao Yao. Fu Jiu sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with her slender legs crossed. The sunlight shone on her face and it was a beautiful scene. Qin Mo didn't know that the person on the other side of the phone was already dressed as a girl. After hearing the youngster's words, his gaze turned colder. Up to you. After saying these 3 words, Qin Mo hung up. No, not so much that he hung up the phone. It would be more accurate to say that he just threw his phone aside. That kind of strength, even in the car, made quite a lot of noise. Secretary Liang was driving in the front and didn't dare to look back. President Qin's behavior was even more unusual than before. Fu Jiu looked at her phone in confusion. The Almighty was angry? Indeed, he should be angry. The Almighty must be very busy today, yet he was still thinking of picking her up. He probably didn't want her to face so many gazes alone. But she had broken his promise. Fu Jiu touched the bridge of her nose. However, being angry now was just a small matter. If they saw the Almighty and the Almighty sensed something, at that time the Almighty would get angry. It definitely wouldn't be that easy. Your Highness Jiu, my friend is here. Shui Yaoyao walked in again. She's downstairs. Fu Jiu jumped down from the balcony and handed her another set of clothes. Let your friend wear this. Spray her hair silver. Chapter 493. 4 in the afternoon. The in-family's villa. In a place like Jiang City where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, there were very few areas with private swimming pools. Beside the swimming pool was a large empty space with a small personal computer parked inside. There seemed to be more people speaking English than Chinese here. The red carpet was spread in the hall. It was definitely luxurious. However, this place was strangely quiet. Other than a few guests who came to visit, it wasn't very lively. It wasn't that they didn't want to come. But Old Master and had said that it was a family banquet and they weren't going to discuss any business. Beside the sandalwood chessboard, Old Master and was still playing chess with his friends. The moment Chinamo entered, his stern face broke into a smile. Everyone didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Other than Chinamo, there wasn't anyone else who could make Old Master and behave like this. Chinamo walked over, his voice neither servile nor overbearing. "Grandpa Yuan, Grandpa Wu." The two elders nodded, their eyes filled with admiration. "I've seen so many so-called dragons and phoenixes, but little Mo is still the most handsome." Old Master loved hearing this. He turned to the helper and said, "Start preparing dinner, make more of what young master likes." Yes. That person was also an elder who had stayed in the Yin family for a long time. He used to take care of movie Queen Yin and knew Chin Mo's tastes like the back of his hand. After Old Master finished speaking, he turned and teased, "You only see your two grandfathers, don't you see your sister Wu?" At this moment, the beauty who was lying on the table lifted her head. She was really beautiful, with a small mouth and fair skin. She was wearing a police uniform and her eyes were very bright. Chinamo didn't respond to Old Master An's words. Instead he said calmly, "I can only accompany grandfather until 6, I have to pick someone up." "Pick someone up?" Old Master raised his eyebrows. That was strange. What kind of person could make his noble grandson pick someone up? He couldn't help but look at Secretary Liang behind Chinamo. "Mr. Liang, who is he picking up?" Secretary Liang respected Old Master very much, so he replied respectfully even though it was a little hard for him to say it out loud. "It's the godbrother that young master recently got, a member of the team, a good player." He did not mention young Master Fu's name. Although Old Master might not have heard of young Master Fu's past achievements, what if he had? Grandpa laughed. "You brat, other than doing business your team members are all grown up. You don't even know how to find a girlfriend. My Wu Zhen is still single." Old Master Wu said, "This kind of thing cannot be rushed." The beauty stood up and glanced at Chin Mo, smiling faintly. "Since Brother Mo isn't looking, I'm not in a hurry either." Yes. "You've been like this since you were young. Whatever your Brother Mo does, you'll do." Old Master Wu heaved a long sigh. "Now you actually became a police officer. Can your face stand being exposed to the sun and wind every day?" Wu Zhen curved her lips, looking rather carefree. "Grandpa, didn't I say not to compare ordinary girls with me? Just look at him, just look at his indifference." Old Master Wu had no choice, but his eyes were filled with pride. Grandpa said, "That's how it should be. However, Zhen, you must remember not to rush forward in the face of danger." Chapter 494. The drunkard had ulterior motives. That was Secretary Liang's first reaction. But in front of so many elders the CEO wouldn't reject it, right? Secretary Liang said it was only right. "I swore to never touch any cases again." Chin Mo's voice was calm, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. Wu Zhen paused then smiled. "I'll ask you again when you want to." Chin Mo didn't speak. Wu Zhen seemed to have discovered something. "Brother Mo, why is your phone screen broken?" Secretary Liang thought to himself, "I fell in the car just now. It slipped and fell on the ground." Chin Mo turned his head, obviously not wanting to continue the conversation. Wu Zhen pulled a chair over and sat beside him, smiling at him. Secretary Liang didn't know why, but he felt that this was something young Master Jiao would do. "I heard that the Qin group is having a masquerade ball today. I haven't participated in such an event in a long time. Brother Mo, can you give me a ticket?" Chin Mo didn't speak. Old Master laughed. "Go if you want to. This kid won't bring you, let Mr. Liang bring you in." Secretary Liang was the target of 3 pairs of eyes. He glanced at the CEO who was sipping on his tea as if it had nothing to do with him. He could only bite the bullet and reply, "Yes." Old Master was trying to matchmake CEO Qin and Miss Wu, a blind date in disguise. When Chin Mo heard this, he put down his porcelain cup and stood up. "I still have a meeting, it's not suitable for me to stay for long. Grandfather, I'll accompany you tomorrow." Old Master understood the meaning behind his words. He knew that his grandson always had his own opinions. He thought the kid would have feelings for Zhen. After all, Jin liked to follow him so much that even a rock would be moved. Why didn't his grandson feel the slightest bit of warmth? Wu Jin's eyes dimmed after hearing Qin Mo's words. But after a while she smiled again. For this person. She liked the police profession. She wasn't afraid of hardship or tiredness. Therefore the rest really didn't count for much. But there was one thing: this person had to be hers. Wu Yin smiled wantonly. She turned around and said to Secretary Liang, "Then I'll go and dress up first." "Thank you, Mr. Liang." This. Secretary Liang looked at the side of his president's face and spat out 3 words with difficulty, "No problem." When he got out of an family, Secretary Liang tried his best to explain, "Boss Qin, in that situation I really had to agree. It doesn't matter." Qin Mo was indifferent. "Let her go if she wants to." Secretary Liang let out a sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that young master was unusually quiet today, especially when he looked out of the car window. It seemed like he was thinking about something. Moreover, he also knew that these matters were basically related to the 9th young master. The traffic jam in River Town started at 5 o'clock. After getting on the viaduct, Secretary Liang turned around and said, "Young master, the business dinner tonight? Prepare a costume for the masquerade ball." Qin Mo interrupted him calmly. "Order a set of military green female clothing and send it to the Fu family." No matter how heartless that fellow was, he didn't want his little brother to do something he didn't like in front of so many people. The female military uniform should at least be trousers. Yes. Secretary Liang had always been efficient. In less than half an hour, there was someone specially sent the military uniform to the Fu family. Chapter 495. Secretary Liang held the phone and looked at Qin Mo, who was still fixing his collar. "Co Qin, forget it?" Qin Mo had obviously heard the words on the other end. His long fingers paused and his voice was a little low. Anyway, that guy has a girl he trusts to protect him. But did he really forget it? Secretary Liang always felt that when his CEO said these 2 words, he was not just a little bit cold. The sky outside finally darkened. Once night fell, it would be foggy. People often joked when they saw Jiangqing, saying that living in Jiang City was like living in a fairyland. Fortunately, the masquerade party was held in a hotel in the middle of the snow. This place was in the suburbs of Jiang City. The air was a little better. Of course, it was only because of the air purifier and the existence of snow. Out of this place and on the national highway, few people would drive here. But today it was very lively here. In addition to many good cars, there was also a Christmas tree as decoration. That Christmas tree was very big and there were many lights hanging on it. In such a dark night, it looked especially beautiful. The atmosphere here was very similar to the Halloween party Fujio had in the 5th Avenue. The British-style building was covered with vines and it looked very grand. In addition, some people who came to the masquerade party were wearing ancient robes. With beautiful masks on their faces, it was hard to tell who was who. Occasionally, there were a few people dressed like vampire nobles, which made people feel that this was a castle in the demon world. The bustling place that never sleeps. Lin Feng came early in the morning. He finally washed away the shame of last year, and he wore a forensic suit that he thought looked very manly. A white coat, pure black trousers and a mask. If it was someone else dressed like this, they would definitely look very ordinary. But Lin Feng didn't realize his aura. Dressing like this was really tempting to commit a crime. Yun, who wore a well-ironed military uniform and straight military boots. When he walked, he even had a strong and crisp sound. When these 2 people appeared, the fans who arranged for them to enter looked over. Look, the person cosplaying as a forensic doctor, it must be Lin Feng." "I think so too. Is it a forensic doctor this year? What a tempting uniform." Lin Feng hadn't expected a fan to recognize him even though he was wearing a mask. He tilted his head and smiled at Yun Hu. "See, sister? It's all because I'm too handsome." Yun Hu arched a brow but didn't say anything. Soon, the fan on the other end of the line continued, "You can tell from her temperament, especially when she's standing next to Yunda." Receive? Lin Feng turned around. "The girl who spoke, come over here. Let's have a good talk. I'm so manly, how can I take it?" However, Lin Feng wouldn't be so petty as to talk to his fans about this. He was depressed. He had to vent his frustrations. He glanced at his childhood friend. Speaking of which, it was because Yun, who had been training since he was young, that he gave people the feeling that he was stronger. In fact, he was also very good at fighting. His abs were solid, but no matter how much he tanned, he couldn't get a good tan. How could he blame him? No, he had to find a sense of balance with little Spade today. Chapter 496. As soon as Lin Feng's voice fell, a loud noise could be heard from the crowd. Some people's eyes seemed to be glued to the entrance of the hotel. A woman was coming from there. The long black chiffon dress accentuated her white lotus-like skin. Under the illumination of the light, she looked even more alluring. There was an opening under the black dress, and everyone could see the woman's slender and fair legs. At her ankle, there was a bright red rose blooming there. It made people want to look again and again. However, none of those could compare to the temperament this person gave off. His face was still covered by a mask, and only his thin lips were exposed like lilac petals. The mask was also different from the others. It was surrounded by a bunch of pure black fur. Through the lustrous mask, people could only see a pair of black pupils. It was a deep and serene sea. Her black hair was like a cloud, hanging down in strands, half curling on both sides of her collarbone. On its head, there was a pair of devil ears made of black diamonds. Under the illumination of the light, it shone with an indescribable beauty. Especially when she raised her eyes, that kind of indifference brought about the temptation was the most charming. Who is she impersonating? You don't know him? Not a bad feeling. It's not just not bad, it's simply too beautiful. I almost stopped breathing just now. Is this also a fan? If it's a woman, she should be a fan. After all, Shui Yaoyao was the only girl in Supreme Alliance. The person in front of him was obviously taller than Shui Yaoyao. The most important thing was his aura. The kind of laziness that emanated from the inside out was really rare. They had never seen a girl more suited to the dark than the one in front of them. I really want to see what she looks like without her mask. When I saw her, I could only think of one word, which... There must be a lot of people asking her to dance today. The sounds of discussion rang out one after another. He didn't notice that Shui Yaoyao, who was sitting in the corner, was shaking and clenching her fists when she saw that figure. He did not know why, but he was a little nervous. Highness Jiao. That must be Highness Jiao. That black gauze dress. Shui Yaoyao had seen it at the Fu family. He had even seen Fu Jiao in a thin veil. It was just a real disguise. She had just seen it. It was so beautiful. Black swan was the only adjective she could think of. Elegant, noble, bewitching. He could even feel the aura of the feather. It was just a pity. Lin Feng didn't look over. He felt that his goal today was not to look at girls. Did the appearance of such a beautiful person have anything to do with him? What this masquerade party meant to him now was to find little Spade. On the other hand, Han Susu and her entourage, who had already arrived, sneered and took a sip of wine when they saw the figure who had captured everyone's attention. Just a little taller. Do these people have to be so exaggerated? In terms of looks, which one of us isn't prettier than her? It's all because of the mask. Who knows how ugly he'll look after taking it off? Yao Jia was the harshest among them, but she did not feel it. Furthermore, she felt that what she said was the truth. These people were just some small fans, and it was unclear what their family backgrounds were like. Those who know better should look at the ermine they wear, and the chains they wear on their wrists. The one who had just walked past, what did he have? Alright, don't bother about her. Han Susu put down her wine glass. Help me save some of my idol. He is different from others. Even if he wears a mask, his presence will be very strong. Chapter 497. The night went on. The lights from the ball shone down. Fu Jiao just sat there lazily, holding a goblet in her hand. She swirled it gently, and there was a faint smile on her lips. She had said it before. She liked this feeling. It was very interesting to hide in the crowd and watch people look for you. But she used to hide from the police. But today she didn't need to hide anymore. Because she saw Lin Feng walking towards Yao Yao. Lin Feng was indeed walking towards Shui Yaoyao. And he felt that his eyesight was very good, and he recognized her immediately. Yao Yao. His words came out of his mouth. Shui Yaoyao raised her eyes subconsciously. Fu Jiao held the side of her face and looked in the dark. She raised her pretty eyebrows. In the future, she would teach Yao Yao not to make a move when someone called her name. Hey, I found you. Lin Feng pulled Yun Hu and walked to the table in big strides. First, he glanced at Shui Yaoyao, and then he bent down and looked at the person sitting next to Shui Yaoyao. That person had messy silver hair, and he was wearing a pure black coat. Lin Feng closed the distance and continued to study. This should be little Spade's style. Just when he was about to point at the person, a loud noise could be heard. No, it shouldn't be called a noise. It was the sound of people gasping. If Fujio's appearance just now was amazing, then this person's appearance almost stunned the whole audience. There were many people who played the role of vampire aristocrats at the masquerade ball. But only he could be as cold and abstinent as a demon. Chinemo. When people realized this name, not only the fans but even the girls who were trying to get tickets were also screaming. Fujio also looked towards the door. She saw the man standing there with his slender legs, looking casual and elegant. He was wearing a white shirt and a black cloak, and he was wearing a pair of boots. The gorgeous silver hair on the collar of the cloak instantly paled against his fair and handsome face. He was even wearing a pair of pure black gloves. The gloves seemed to have been custom-made for him. They wrapped around his slender fingers, making him look even more beautiful. There was a blood-red gemstone ring on his ring finger, which seemed to symbolize his identity as a vampire aristocrat. There were silver flowers on his black cuffs. Every part of it was dark and luxurious. When he turned to the side, his nose was straight and well-defined. Diamond fragments adorned the platinum mask on his face. His pure black hair fell down, making him look incomparably demonic. The young girls could no longer control their intense heartbeats and had already begun to scream. Almighty Qin! Almighty Qin! Almighty Qin! Listening to those voices, Yi Zichen felt a chill down his spine. Other than wanting to bring the Almighty home and raise him, Fujio had another thought. It wasn't easy to be a golden man like the Almighty. Thinking about it carefully, there was no difference between the Almighty wearing a mask and not wearing a mask, and there was no joy in participating in a masquerade party. With that slender and straight figure and that domineering and indifferent aura, he would be recognized as soon as he appeared. Just as Fujio was thinking about this, she saw that person's beautiful mountain-like back paused for a moment, as if he had sensed her gaze. Chapter 498. If Lin Feng hadn't stretched out his arm, Fujio would have been seen by Chinemo. Captain, here we are here. Lin Feng's voice was very recognizable at certain times. Hearing that voice, Chinemo turned his deep gaze over. Fujio had never been so thankful for Lin Feng's desperate gesture. She had to admit that the Almighty was really vigilant. She had only taken a photo, but he could actually sense it. Fortunately, besides Yao Yao, she also had brother Lin. In fact, the reason why Chinemo looked away was not because of Lin Feng. It was because he also saw Shui Yao Yao. Lin Feng was still excited. He quickly stepped forward and shared his achievement. Captain, look, I found little Spade. Chinemo maintained his standing posture. He didn't sit down but suddenly bent down. With his left hand on the table, he slowly moved closer to Shui Yao Yao's friend in that small space. That girl's face turned red immediately. Even through the mask, one could see how nervous her heart was beating. After all, when Yao Yao asked her to come, she never said that she would meet Almighty Qin. And Almighty Qin was really much more handsome than he was on TV. Especially when he was dressed like this. Unconsciously, that girl's eyes were filled with infatuation. She wanted this man to be closer to her, just a little bit closer. However, at this moment, Chinemo suddenly pulled back his hand, stood up straight again, and said in a very indifferent voice, "It's not that guy." Not little Spade? Lin Feng didn't believe it. Impossible, Captain, look at this guy's silver hair and coat. Chinemo glanced at that girl again. The coat is that guy's but the person isn't. Lin Feng was shocked and his whole body froze. But Yao Yao is clearly here, and this guy's body shape. He did it on purpose for us to see. Chinemo took out a glass of red wine, raised his head and drank it in one gulp. But there was a hint of a smile that no one could see at the corner of his mouth. Lin Feng took out his phone and looked at the photo in the team's WeChat group. But there's no mistake, little Spade must be here. Otherwise, why would he have a photo here? And he took a photo of you, Captain? Me? Chinmo's phone screen was smashed by him. He didn't look at the messages in the group chat. When he heard Lin Feng's words, he reached out and snatched the phone over. He looked at his own photo, his eyes dimming. I can't take the photo from here. Really? Lin Feng looked at the photo for a long time, but he couldn't see anything special about it. How did the captain know about these things? Chinemo didn't return the phone to him. Instead, he said calmly, if I were you, I would ask Shui Yao Yao more questions. Who knows, I might be able to get something out of her. Good idea. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He didn't realize that this was just an excuse his captain had made up to take away his phone. Since it was already like this. Shui Yao Yao would never tell anyone about Fujio cross-dressing. Lin Feng would only be wasting his efforts. After sending Lin Feng away, Qin Imo walked to the opposite side and stood in the middle of the crowd. He seemed to be measuring something with his eyes. Chapter 499. That kind of unmoving expression. Like a demon, he was still holding a glass of red wine in his hand, but his eyes took in everything. Was that guy trying to play a game of cat and mouse? Qin Imo compared the photo on his phone. He picked it up to take a look and lifted his lids. The elegance of his actions attracted many onlookers. Han Susu walked over with her people looking very happy. She took off her mask and smiled. "Big brother Qin, it's me, Susu." Qin Mo's eyes dimmed because someone had been interrupted. Han Susu was only good at reading people's expressions and could not tell anything else. She extended her hand and pushed her friend out. "This is Yao Jia. I didn't have the time to introduce her the last time. She's a Qin fan." Yao Jia blushed as she extended her hand to greet Qin Imo. The man put away his phone and said coldly, "I'm busy." Only 3 words. Not one more. Yao Jia's hand froze in midair. However, she only felt awkward for a moment before she retracted her hand. However, his heart was somewhat gloomy. She had seen Almighty Qin go over to Shui Yaoyao's side just now and saw their attitudes. Even though Shui Yaoyao was from the Supreme Alliance, wasn't she also a Qin fan? Almighty Qin didn't cherish his fans at all. However, Yao Jia did not think too much about it. The person she and Han Susu hated the most was Shui Yaoyao, that fat pig. There was one more. The woman who had stolen their limelight was sitting in the corner not far away. "Today is really not going well for us." After returning to their card bag, Yao Jia grumbled heavily. "One fat pig isn't enough. Now there's another one." Han Susu took out her phone and sent a few words over. Her eyes lit up. "Don't be sad. Let me tell you something. I'm going to have a very good sister coming back later. If she comes, everyone will have to step aside." "Which sister are you talking about?" Yao Jia knew that Han Susu's background meant that her friends were either rich or of high status. Han Susu moved closer to her ear and whispered a name. "What did you say, which?" Han Susu reached out her hand to cover Yao Jia's mouth. "Lower your voice. The only young lady of the Wu family?" Yao Jia still couldn't calm down. "I've seen her in her police uniform. She's so beautiful. She's my goddess." Han Susu laughed. "She'll be here in a while. When that time comes, she won't be able to steal the limelight from our circle. Moreover, the Wu family and the Qin family have always been on good terms." "Are you implying that the Qin and Wu families intend to?" Yao Jia guessed. Han Susu pretended not to care and said, "I'm not sure yet, but Sister Wu and Brother Qin have always had a good relationship, you know?" Yao Jia nodded. Although she felt that it was a pity that Almighty Qin was likely taken this time. But now, compared to those, she was more willing to receive the attention of others. That was because there were already more than 8 people who wanted to invite the cross-dressing woman to dance with them. Even Shui Yaoyao, that fat pig, had somehow gotten lucky and was invited once. But no one was interested in them. To people like Yao Jia and Han Susu, this was no doubt a slap in the face. Therefore they had to get back at them. And at that moment, Qin Imo, who was standing right in front of them, suddenly stopped in his tracks. He pulled up the photo again and compared the angle. That pair of deep black eyes could not block out the resplendent light even through the mask. Chapter 500. On the other side, Fujio didn't realize that the photo she sent to the group would reveal her whereabouts. After all, according to the rules, she had to send 3 photos to prove that she came to the scene dressed as a girl. One of them had to be sent after midnight, and her face had to be taken out of the picture. So Fujio was quite serious about completing her task. After taking the first photo, she began to think about how to take the second one. At the same time, she was also wary of Qin Imo, who was shaking his wine glass in the crowd. But when that person suddenly turned around and looked at her without warning, Fujio took a step back. It was so dark, Almighty Qin shouldn't be able to find her. However, that person continued to walk towards her step by step. She was in the dark and the Almighty was in the light. She could clearly see the rubble on that platinum mask. She could even see that the corner of his mouth was slightly raised and he was smiling like a ghost. It seemed to be there but not there. It entangled her heart and it felt like she was being locked. At that moment, it was as if the surrounding dance music was silent. When that deep gaze fell on Fujio, Fujio was stunned. She even had the illusion that she couldn't breathe. Did the Almighty recognize her? Not likely. Half of her body was hidden in the dark. He shouldn't have recognized her. But how could she explain the tall and slender figure that was getting closer and closer to her? He was so close that she could even see the silver flowers on his cuffs and the custom-made black gloves. It was unrealistic to run away now. Could it be that she had really been recognized? Fujio didn't move. She was still leaning on the sofa lazily, her long legs slightly exposed and the smoke filled the air. This was the kind of calmness she needed. Even though she had a lot of thoughts in her mind, her expression was lazy and seductive, without a hint of panic. She even picked up the wine glass and took a sip of the red wine. Since she had decided to take a gamble, she would pretend until the end. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. Fujio felt like she was back in the Fifth Avenue. Being caught, and by the same person at that, was her biggest shortcoming since she entered the industry. As the man got closer, that thick scent floated over, bringing with it an invasiveness that had never existed before. Under the light, the man's eyes were like broken stars. It was as if nothing could hide from him. Finally he walked in front of her. At this moment, Chin-mo saw the person sitting in the darkness clearly. No, it should be said that the first thing he saw was her long and slender legs. Her legs were very beautiful. They were as fair as jade and looked even more delicate in the dark night. In particular, she was wearing a pure black muslin dress, which made her legs look even more slender. There was also a blood-red rose at his ankle. It looked as if it had just bloomed, and it was as tender as a drop of water. The black dress didn't stay still. As it moved, it was even more beautiful than the lights. Below the slightly open collar was a beautiful and delicate collarbone, and below the collarbone was a woman's beautiful hook. That curve made Chin-mo's eyes darken a little. Moreover, as soon as he raised his head, he could see the other party's eyes. It was so black and clear that it even glistened with water. Very. These two words flashed across Chin-mo's mind. But in an instant, he clenched his fists. All the blood in his body seemed to heat up. Chapter 501. However, Fujio, who was being stared at by him, could only see that pair of eyes staring at her. They were dark like stone, flickering. It was probably because Chin-mo was here. So even the eyes behind him were full of astonishment. Especially Han Susu and her group, because they never thought that Almighty Chin would be by that woman's side. Shui Yaoyao looked at this scene and her heart was in her throat. She couldn't help but stand up. The two of them were very close to each other. But one was sitting and the other was standing. Did the Almighty recognize Highness Jiao? Shui Yaoyao was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Fujio just looked away as if she didn't know Chin-mo. She looked at the moment when the two of them brushed past each other. Shui Yaoyao held her breath. Every second passed extremely slowly, so slowly that even Fujio felt that it was not good to drag on any longer. Shui Yaoyao was afraid that Fujio would be recognized. While others were talking, she wished she could grow a pair of wings and fly over. Fortunately, Chin-mo didn't have any intention of stopping, and he didn't even turn his head. It was as if he walked over not because of anyone but simply because of this direction. Fujio was about to heave a sigh of relief after she moved away from that handsome and indifferent side profile. But she heard a familiar male voice behind her. Wait a minute. Fujio had no choice but to stop again. Shui Yaoyao's eyes began to shake. However, the man who caused the uneasiness of the others only slowly walked back. This time, Chin-mo stood directly in front of Fujio. After looking at her for a while, he suddenly bent down and looked into her eyes. At that moment, the handsome face under the mask suddenly enlarged, and the eyes that were as dark as the night seemed to be full of seduction. That kind of aura was very threatening. Even though there was a layer of cloth between them, the man's aura could still be felt. After the distance was shortened, the air pressure was lowered. That faint smell of tobacco lingered at the tip of her nose. This sudden close contact made Fujio instinctively take a step back, but she was still smiling. What's the matter? The calmer you are, the harder it is to be seen through. This is the basic principle of disguise. Chin-mo was still bent down with one hand in his pocket. He seemed to be smiling and he said politely and indifferently, "Sorry, I got the wrong person." After saying these words, Chin-mo straightened his back, as though he had really recognized the wrong person. With his back straight, he continued walking in the original direction without any reluctance. At this moment, Fujio finally relaxed. Seeing that Shui Yaoyao was looking in her direction, she gave her a reassuring smile. It was indeed too dangerous just now. Fortunately, she was experienced. However, he couldn't stay in this place forever. The Almighty's eyes were too sharp. She was sitting here dressed up like this and the Almighty could actually tell that she looked like him? It was time to challenge the battle plan and prepare for guerrilla warfare. They had to wait until midnight to take another photo. They had to leave immediately. It would be midnight in an hour and a half. Fujio glanced at the clock hanging in the middle of the hotel, then walked to another corner to take a second photo. When it was sent to the group, our classmate Fujio had no idea. Her every move was seen by Almighty Chin. That was the hotel's surveillance room. This was the place Chinemo had left for. The security guard in the surveillance room stood beside him and asked the man politely, "Boss Chin, are you only looking at this lady?" Chapter 502. As soon as Feng Yi heard that his Almighty had gone to the hotel's surveillance room, he thought something had happened, so he hurried over. But when he arrived, Chinemo had already pushed open the door and walked out. He was wearing black gloves, looking like a demon deacon. Feng Yi felt that there was danger no matter how he looked at it. He didn't know exactly what danger it was. He could only ask tentatively, "Co Chin, I received a call saying that you wanted the hotel to help you change the surveillance of the ball. Has it been changed?" Chinemo didn't say anything and just glanced sideways at him. That one glance made Feng Yi shut his mouth. He knew that he shouldn't ask what he shouldn't ask. Feng Yi had always been a qualified manager. "Then let's go back to the ball now. It's going to be midnight in an hour. Even if you don't participate in the lights out event, you have to dance with the girl with the most invitations today." Originally, Feng Yi just said it casually to change the topic. Unexpectedly, Chinemo said faintly, "I'll participate." "That's fine. Join? It wasn't surprising that Feng Yi was shocked. The lights out event was nothing else but kissing. For 3 years, no matter how many people there were, Almighty Chin had never participated in this event. What was going on this year? Feng Yi still had a dumbfounded expression on his face. On the other side, Chinemo took out his phone. On the synchronized surveillance screen, a certain someone was still biting a French fry, looking at where to take the last photo. Even if the clarity wasn't high enough, the basic movements and expressions could be seen. Chinemo looked at the certain someone walking back and forth on the screen. He pointed at the screen and spat out a few words with a smile. "Reckless kitten." Fujio didn't know that she was being watched. Who would have thought that Almighty Chin would change the surveillance of the ball? That was why capitalists were evil. Maigio was still seriously completing her task. She was bewitching all the way, rejecting no less than 20 invitations. Chinemo took in everyone's invitation. If he hadn't confirmed it with the surveillance, perhaps even Chinemo wouldn't have been sure that the woman in the black gauze dress and devil ears was that guy. He always thought that no matter how beautiful a guy was, he wouldn't feel comfortable in women's clothes. But Chinmo's fingers brushed over the black swan-like figure on the screen. He thought of those watery eyes and his gaze deepened. Han Susu, who was on the left side of the ball, felt more and more upset as she thought about what had just happened. She took out her phone and sent a WeChat message. "Sister Wu, why aren't you here yet? You don't know, but Big Brother Chin actually walked towards a girl just now. That girl must be feeling proud in her heart now. Come quickly and let her have a good look. She's nothing." Walking towards a girl? When Wu Jin saw those words, her eyes narrowed. She floored the accelerator and stopped the car. Ignoring the security guards behind her, she tossed the keys behind her and strolled into the ball. Wu Jin was indeed beautiful, and her dressing was different from other women. He was wearing a military uniform, long leather shoes, and a leather cap on his head. Her straight and slender legs were even more beautiful than those of a model. His waist was tightened by the black leather belt, which made him look very free and easy. She was also the only one not wearing a mask at the ball. Chapter 503. Sister Wu, here we are here. Han Susu waved her hand. Wu Jin had the unique arrogance of the Wu family. When she lifted her chin, it was very beautiful. After seeing Han Susu and the rest, she smiled before walking over. "Who is this?" "I don't know. Probably not a fan." "Could it be that Wu family?" "Which one?" "It's the Wu family multinational corporation in our province. Your favorite superstar is from their family." "Damn, so rich. To be honest, I don't care if I have money or not. I just want to know where my big spade is." "Me too." The person who spoke chuckled. "Maybe I'm old, so I don't have much interest in these things. But before I came, Turtle asked me to help her get a photo of Big Spade's mask, but I still don't know where he is." Some Spade fans were like that. But it didn't mean that others weren't tempted by Wu Zhen. She was referring to both men and women. Perhaps some people were like that. Once they knew that the other party was rich, they wanted to get closer to them. And being rich could even add points to some beauties. For example, if the person who came in without a mask and in a military uniform was someone other than Wu Zhen, they would say, "If you think you look good, don't wear a mask. Are you trying to attract attention?" Just like when Fujio appeared just now. No matter how enchanting and beautiful she was, they would find reasons to be bad for her. Because Fujio didn't have the identity of young mistress of the Wu family. But Wu Zhen was different. The moment she sat down, Yao Jia and the rest gathered around her. Han Susu raised her eyebrows. "Sister Wu, do you see the woman in the black chiffon dress sitting in the corner? She was the one who Brother Qin walked over to just now." Wu Zhen looked up and glanced over. They were all women, and they would always be wary of the presence of beautiful women. Han Susu nodded. "Let's wait and see." Wu Zhen smiled, but it wasn't very warm. There are bound to be many girls around him. I can't just take action every time there's a pretty girl. What about him? Of course Han Susu knew who Wu Zhen was referring to. She was a little angry when she mentioned this. "Big Brother Qin didn't even greet us. We don't know where he went from just now, but he's been staying with his team members." Wu Zhen smiled and was about to head in the direction Han Susu had mentioned. Someone came over and asked her to dance. Han Susu and the rest laughed. What were they talking about? As long as Big Sister Wu came, she would soon surpass that woman who had appeared out of nowhere. After Wu Zhen rejected the girl, Han Susu whispered into her ear, "The girl with the most invitations will have a chance to dance with Brother Qin. This is a benefit for Supreme Alliance fans." "The benefits are so good?" Wu Zhen arched a brow. "It's not that he doesn't like dancing." Han Susu shrugged. "Big Brother Qin has agreed to all of your 3 years abroad. After all, it's the company's arrangement." "I understand." Wu Zhen's eyes flashed. Even though she had danced with Qin Mo before, she couldn't give such an opportunity to another woman, right? With this thought, Wu Zhen smiled again. "I'll head over to take a look." It would have been fine if Wu Zhen hadn't moved, but now that she moved, she was heading towards Qin Mo. Chapter 504. Wu Zhen smiled, sitting beside Qin Mo as though there was no one else around. Lin Feng was still searching for traces of Little Spade with his pair of eyes. They really didn't expect that someone would suddenly sit on their side, and the expressions on their faces froze. The sounds of discussion rang out beside his ears. Everyone was curious. "Does Miss Wu know Almighty Qin? It looks very familiar. I have a feeling that I'm going to break up." "What heartbreak? It's obvious that I can't compete with Miss Wu. If this isn't heartbreak, then what is?" "You're really..." The fans were basically a little disappointed, but this did not affect them from wishing their idol well. If Almighty Qin really liked her, they would silently support her. The commotion here was huge. Fujio, who was wearing a black muslin dress, only took a glance. After a quick glance, she continued to look for opportunities to take photos. However, he still had some ideas. After all, she had heard the Almighty talking on the phone. Last time in Tokyo, the beauty that the Almighty mentioned was the one today? Thinking of this, Fujio felt like she was being a busybody again. She curled her lips into a smile and glanced at the clock hanging in the hall. The most important thing now was to take pictures and leave when it was time. He didn't feel safe staying here. Qin Mo saw all of her actions. Because of this, his eyes gradually turned cold. That guy didn't seem to care who was sitting next to him. It seemed that sometimes you cared about others, but others might not necessarily care about you. Wu Zhen sat there, noticing that Qin Mo wasn't paying attention to her. She raised her eyebrows and glanced over, wanting to see what he was looking at. Qin Mo put his phone away before she did, his gaze indifferent. Wu Zhen didn't mind his attitude. Instead, she smiled and said, "I heard that the girl with the most invitations can dance with Brother Mo. If I win, don't reject me." Qin Mo tilted his head and took out a cigarette from the pack, lighting it up. "I won't reject the company's arrangements." "You said it." Wu Zhen's smile deepened. Qin Mo's voice was faint, polite, and distant. "We'll talk after you win." "That's easy. Although I'm late, I have other ways." With that said, Wu Zhen walked towards Fujio. "Hi." The first thing he did was greet them. It was this greeting that made Fujio move her gaze away from the clock and look at the person in front of her. Up until now, everything Wu Zhen had obtained had been earned through hard work. Ever since she got to know him, she knew what she needed. Moreover, Wu Jin had always felt that it was only a matter of time before they got together. Even when she went abroad to participate in some special training, it was also because of him. No woman in the world was more suitable for Qin Mo than her. She was the only one who had seen how that person looked when he solved the case, and it was completely different from now. Wu Jin knew very well what kind of girl that person admired. Therefore she did things neatly and said whatever was on her mind. However, Wu Jin was the only daughter of the Wu family. She had never considered that her behavior was, after all, sudden. Chapter 505. Fu Jiu didn't know what opportunity she would get if she received the most invitations. She had been thinking about disguising herself, completing the photo mission, and guarding against the Almighty. How could she have noticed such gossip? When Wu Jin made the request, Fu Jiu didn't reply immediately. Instead, she quietly waited for the other party to continue. The reason was simple. She didn't like the other party's attitude. Wu Jin didn't expect someone to not give her face. She smiled lightly and continued, "Miss, do you have any doubts?" Fu Jiu looked at her, leaning against the glass countertop. She raised her hand to get a glass of red wine and said lazily, "No." Wu Jin narrowed her eyes, suddenly feeling that the woman in front of her wasn't easy to deal with. But she wasn't here to cause trouble, she was only here for an opportunity. Naturally, she wouldn't show any unhappiness. "Since that's the case, state your conditions." Fu Jiu took a sip of red wine and smiled lightly. "Attitude." "What?" Wu Jin didn't understand. Fu Jiu smiled, her eyes revealing darkness under the mask. "I thought that if you want something from me, you should at least have a better attitude and not be overbearing." Hearing that, Wu Jin clenched her fingers, then tilted her head and smiled lightly. "Looks like I have to explain. Because of my profession, I'm used to wearing a police uniform, so my style of doing things has naturally become like this. It's rare for me and Brother Mo to have a chance to dance together. Can you please let me have it?" Fu Jiu's fingers paused. If there was such a chance. Of course she had to let him have it. Otherwise she would be the one dancing with the Almighty. Letting her have it would be a reason to escape. Giving it to her was a reason to escape. Fu Jiu's lips curved slightly. Just after saying sure, Qin Mo walked over, his gaze sweeping across the room, making one feel extremely cold. "Sure? Looks like someone really needs a lesson." Fu Jiu looked at that emotionless side profile, and her body involuntarily retreated. Maintaining a safe distance was the first choice. Qin Mo still looked nonchalant, but the knuckles of the fingers hidden under the black gloves were a little white. He didn't speak to Fu Jiu as though he didn't know her. Instead, he turned his head and said to Wu Jin, "Don't break Supreme Alliance's rules." Just a few indifferent words. Wu Jin's pupils trembled as though she had received a huge blow. But very quickly she smiled again. "I was just asking this lady. Since Brother Mo isn't happy, forget it." Everyone watched from afar. They couldn't tell who Qin Mo was more willing to dance with. But in the end, according to the rules, the demoness won. Manager Feng stood outside the crowd thinking, "Stop fooling around. When has the Almighty ever followed the rules?" In the past 3 years, which year did he stay from the beginning to the end? He only showed his face and left. This year was special to begin with. What was even more special was that Almighty Qin was actually going to participate in the Lights Out plan. Didn't that mean that he would have to kiss his dance partner? F***ck, why did he feel that his Almighty treated that witch differently? Qin Mo didn't leave after he finished speaking. He still stood in front of Fu Jiu. Chapter 506. Mr. Just as Fu Jiu started to speak, the bell on the other side began to ring. Damn. Everyone knew what it meant. It was 15 minutes to midnight. The melodious waltz played on time. Fu Jiu looked at the man standing in front of her. He reached out his black-gloved hand and said indifferently, "Give it to me." "Give what to me?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. And that voice seemed to despise her for being stupid. Fu Jiu still didn't move. She was thinking of ways to reject this dance. How could she dance just like that? Qin Mo's deep eyes looked at that fluffy head. There was no emotion on his face, but his eyes were dark. Based on his understanding of a certain someone, she must be thinking of how to escape. What a pity, at this point she still wasn't willing to dance with him. How could she let a certain someone escape so easily? Just as Fu Jiu's eyes were still drifting, Her left wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Because of this action, it wasn't within her expectations. Fujio's whole body leaned forward uncontrollably, and the tip of her nose bumped into Chinmo's chest. The faint smell of tobacco on the man filled her mouth and nose. It was quiet and cold, and it smelled familiar. The people behind him, whether it was Wu Zhen or the members of the Supreme Alliance, couldn't hide the shock on their faces. They probably thought that Chinmo shouldn't have been so focused. Only Fujio didn't feel anything. That was because an emotionless male voice rang in her ears, "Stand properly." These two words were very much like the Almighty's usual style. So, the Almighty shouldn't have known it was her until now. However, the two of them were too close to each other. Every time she moved, the man's tobacco smell would follow, and Fujio had nowhere to hide. Fujio could clearly see the high bridge of his nose and the irresistible allure of his sexy thin lips. He was looking down at her. That pair of beautiful eyes under the mask was like a deep well, indifferent and noble. She wanted to pull her hand back. But he had already started to lead her to dance. Fujio knew that it would be too pretentious to shake off the Almighty's hand. She thought that as long as they didn't stick together, they wouldn't be discovered. Shui Yaoyao, the only person in the know, was speechless after seeing this scene. He looked at the two people on the dance floor. There was only one thought in her mind, and that was that they were a good match. Whether it was his height, temperament, or that indescribable feeling. Because Almighty Qin was a person with an indifferent temperament and was full of nobility, it was destined that no matter who stood beside him, they would pale in comparison. But for someone like Hainish Jiao, he wouldn't. The fairy-like black swan danced in Almighty Qin's arms, but it didn't make people feel inferior. On the contrary, it made her even more bewitching and devilish. The two men looked like they came from the darkness. Even their outfits complemented each other. It was as if they had always been in this world. Gradually, Wu Zhen's gaze darkened. The money in her hand was almost deformed from her grip. The surrounding scenery was constantly changing because of the dancing steps. The lights in the ball were dim, so Fujio could only see Chinmo's eyes flickering. She couldn't even see the reactions of the people around her. The number of people on the dance floor began to increase. Chapter 507. When the lights dimmed, her sense of touch became more sensitive. The man's unique breath blew on Fujio's neck, making her move uncomfortably. Fujio had never danced such a melancholy dance before. She was afraid that the two of them would touch. But even with such a distance between their chests, Fujio could clearly feel the warmth from Chinmo's body. Her black dress was made of gauze, and one of the Almighty's hands was on her waist. Then, along with the rhythm of the dance, they touched again and again. For a moment, there was an indescribable numbness in her tailbone. However, at this moment, the man lowered his eyes and leaned his thin lips against her ear. His voice sounded emotionless. "Don't lose your balance, understand?" Fujio finally witnessed how cold the Almighty was when he treated girls. But at this moment she had better not speak. What if she opened her mouth and attracted the Almighty's attention? Anyway, the dance had started. She might as well finish the dance like this. Then she could retreat. The reason why Fujio had this idea was that she didn't expect that Lin Feng would still be looking for her even though it was almost midnight. His voice drifted into her ears. "I bet little Spade is nearby. He sent a photo just now. At midnight he will take another photo. Let's watch who will raise their phones." Fujio heard that and laughed in her heart. "Brother Lin, you don't have to raise your phone to take a photo. Plus, I won't take it at midnight." Later, when everyone was counting down, she would turn on the camera function of her phone and delay the photo by 10 seconds. But when she thought about this, Fujio didn't know about the Midnight Lights Out event. After all, she was a newcomer in the Supreme Alliance. It was her first year attending the New Year's Eve party, so it was normal that she didn't know. In fact, Shui Yaoyao didn't know either because she didn't ask around. Plus, her attention was on Fujio. She could tell that she was worried about Fujio. But because of this worry, the hand on her waist tightened after being noticed by Chinmo. Fujio naturally didn't know what was going on with the Almighty. She just looked at the man's cold eyes. She could only sense his impatience. It seemed that the Almighty really didn't like girls. However, this was also a good thing for her. Since the Almighty didn't want to break the rules, he definitely wanted it to end sooner than she did. At that time, once she left, she would no longer have to suffer this kind of mental torture. She had to constantly be on guard against being discovered. It was too tiring. Compared to wearing men's clothing, it was even more tiring. Is dancing with me boring? The man's deep and graceful voice slowly sounded. Fujio couldn't speak, so she could only shake her head. She thought to herself, Almighty, you are the one who looks bored. Don't worry, it will be over soon. With her eyes lowered, Fujio didn't notice how dark Chinmo's eyes were when he said that. And Manager Feng, who knew the inside story, really couldn't sit still. She looked at the clock again and again, and looked at the two eye-catching people on the dance floor again and again. When the host came over and told him that there were only 3 minutes left until midnight, he was about to pass the microphone to him. Fengyi was completely nervous. Every year went by like this. It was just a lights-out event at midnight. Why was he so different today? It must be the Almighty's influence. Chapter 508. 2 minutes. 1.5 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. When Fengyi took the microphone from the MC, the music stopped. Everyone stopped dancing and looked in Fengyi's direction. Their eyes were filled with excitement. There are 25 seconds until the new year. At midnight the lights will go out. Is everyone ready? Fengyi had been in the industry for a long time. Even though he was in a complicated mood, his smile was still elegant, like a successful man. Ready? They answered in unison. Even Coco, who didn't dance, joined in the fun with a big white rabbit in his arms. He had already decided that if he didn't have anyone to kiss, he would kiss his rabbit. Lin Feng was the most miserable one. This year he finally didn't have to dress up as a girl and could invite someone to dance. But when he realized that it was midnight, he realized that he had been with Little Spade the entire time. Yunhu was the only one left. Was he supposed to kiss Yunhu? Some fans noticed his side glance, and Yunhu lowered his head at the same time. In an instant, pink bubbles filled the air. Fujio and Shui Yaoyao didn't know what was going on, but they exchanged glances through the crowd. Fujio was glad that the Almighty let go of her waist, so she could free her hand to take the third photo with her phone. 10. Fengyi held the microphone and started counting down with bright eyes. Soon people followed. 9. 8. 7. When Fujio was at the Fifth Avenue, she had participated in a group New Year's celebration. That atmosphere was different from her own New Year's celebration. Everyone seemed to be very happy. When one person's happiness was shared with another, it would become 2 parts of happiness. When so many people were happy, it would spread a kind of excitement. So Fujio didn't realize that there was something wrong. Until the countdown reached 4, Fengyi suddenly said, "Everyone, don't kiss the wrong person." Kiss the wrong person? What did he mean? Fujio sensed something and raised her eyebrows. Wu Jin's face turned pale instantly. She asked Han Susu in a low voice, "What did Fengyi mean by don't kiss the wrong person?" At midnight, everyone has to kiss their dance partner. Han Susu studied Wu Jin's expression. This seems to be the Supreme Alliance's tradition. Kissing my dance partner? Wu Jin was annoyed. Why didn't you tell me something so important earlier? Sister Wu, don't worry. Big brother Qin never participates in this game. He'll be back when the countdown ends. It wasn't Han Susu's first time participating, so she knew the process very well. She wasn't the only one who thought this way. All of the team members had the same thought. Hence, no one paid attention to Chinemo. Only Fujio instinctively wanted to retreat after hearing the news. But it was still too late. She had just taken a step forward. The 0 in Fengyi's mouth dropped abruptly. Fujio could only feel her wrist being pulled back. The lights were instantly extinguished, replaced by countless candles that mixed with the starlight and fell into the wooden window. The flickering candlelight was faintly discernible, swaying slowly in circles like a human pulse. Brother Emo, it's... Fujio hadn't finished her eye. Chapter 509. Just like that, he kissed the person in front of him as if there was no one else around. When the unexpected breath was imprinted on Fujio's lips, it was as cold as snow. There was only a blank in her head. There was a faint smell of tobacco. He didn't give her any chance to resist. It should be said that she didn't expect Chinemo to kiss her. Because according to his habits in the past, he should have come back. But at that moment, everyone froze. Everyone's expression was indescribable. Fujio wanted to use her usual fighting skills to resist. But the man was one step ahead of her. He pressed her wrist and held the back of her head with his other hand. His tall figure leaned forward and deepened the strength of the kiss. Even Chinemo himself didn't know that he just wanted to teach someone a lesson. but after seeing those watery eyes, he couldn't help but kiss her. That taste. He was fascinated by it. It was sweet, soft, and emitted a faint fragrance. It was almost impossible to resist the urge to have more. Fujio wanted to resist, but he pressed her against the long dining table. He forced Fujio's lips and teeth open with his tongue. It was like a hurricane that swept away the sweetness with the taste of candy. Men were naturally aggressive, not to mention men who were drunk. In some aspects, Fujio was a novice. It was the first time she was kissed like this. Her heartbeat seemed to be disrupted and there was no order to it. Not to mention, the numbness from the friction between their skin was like a lightning bolt, piercing through her tailbone. The sky was dark. It seemed like Fujio couldn't hear anything. Or like all the sounds were amplified. Especially the screams around. It was almost deafening. But the clearest sound was the man's heartbeat. It was deep and powerful. As if it could pull away all the noise. Even Fujio herself didn't know how that kiss ended. But when she wanted to open her mouth and bite him, the man had let go of her and there was no light in his eyes. There was even an indescribable feeling. But that feeling only lasted for a moment. In the next second he became that unapproachable almighty Qin again. His aura was cold like a jade prince. Fujio didn't make herself look pathetic. Instead, those thin lips that were exposed outside the mask became even more irresistible after being kissed. Chinamo just looked at her. The two of them stared at each other. The scene was very beautiful. In an instant, the people went from screaming to an unprecedented silence. Lin Feng was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. The captain, he actually took the initiative to kiss a woman? Yun Hu's eyes widened in shock as well. More importantly, he was wondering who the witch was. On the other side, Han Susu's eyes widened. None of them dared to look at Wu Zhen. Even from where they stood, they could feel the indignation emanating from Wu Zhen. That unwillingness seemed to have drained all the blood from Wu Zhen's face. She looked at the scene in disbelief, her fingers tightening bit by bit. Shui Yaoyao, the only one who knew, covered her mouth. Almighty Qin. Almighty Qin actually kissed Highness Jiao. Fujio narrowed her eyes, wiped her lips with the back of her hand, and decided to leave immediately. Chapter 510. After saying that, he just looked at her quietly. It was as if he wouldn't let her go if she didn't tell him the truth. Fujio suddenly felt a little depressed. But her wrist was still held in his hand. There were many people here, and it was very inconvenient for her to move in her black dress. Did you call me Brother Mo? At this point, the man suddenly stopped talking and raised his hand to grab her hair. Fujio knew he was suspicious, so she raised her hand to protect herself. Her expression became even more depressed. To avoid being exposed in public, she decided to strike first. Okay, that's right, it's me, Fujio. This is a wig. Chinamo looked at her lowered fluffy head and curled up his thin lips outside the mask. He pretended to be surprised. Why didn't you say it was you earlier? Fujio wiped her mouth with the back of her hand again. I wanted to say it, but you moved so fast that I lost my first kiss. First kiss? Chinamo raised his eyebrows. Lord Jiao is experienced in confessing. How could it be your first kiss? Fujio. Was it appropriate for the Almighty to bring up a confession at this time? And why did he call her Lord Jiao? She was depressed. Chinamo looked at the redder lips of the person in front of him. He moved his fingers to stop the man's movement. His eyes were a little heavy, but his voice was indifferent. It was just a kiss. Do you have to wipe it? Fujio didn't want to wipe it, but she could still feel the faint smell of tobacco. It was all because of the Almighty's strong presence. Even if you want to wipe it when you get home. Lin Feng is here and he has been looking for you for a long time. Do you want to say hello to him before leaving? Fujio knew the Almighty very well. He wanted to negotiate with her. Brother Mo, help me. I'll cook porridge for you next time your stomach hurts. Fujio really didn't want Lin Feng to see her like this. If Lin Feng knew, everyone would know. The main thing was that she and the Almighty had just kissed, so they would definitely attack her. How could the Almighty be so nonchalant? Sure enough, she wasn't as thick-skinned as the Almighty. I don't lack porridge. Chinamo tangled his fingers in her hair and thought for a moment. Same as before. Fujio looked at Lin Feng, who was getting closer and closer. Same as before? What were the conditions before? Could it be that this guy had never taken his words to heart? Chinamo narrowed his eyes dangerously, then laughed coldly. No puppy love, stay away from girls and boys, don't flirt with anyone you see. I don't have a girl or a boy, Fujio retorted. Qin Mo's voice was calm. Shuyaoyao, you guys are too close. The team doesn't allow relationships between members, it will affect the competition. So it was this. Fu Jiu was just about to say something when she saw Lin Feng looking over suspiciously. She turned sideways and smiled lightly. Brother Mo, we can talk about this later. I have to retreat now. Cover me. Qin Mo's eyes flashed. He agreed, but he had an additional condition. Do you know the side door of the hotel? Wait for me there. Fu Jiu. You want me to wait in this dress? Agree first, we'll talk about it later. Unfortunately, Qin Mo lowered his head again. He bent down and whispered in her ear, you're not allowed to leave with anyone. If I don't find you later, you should know the consequences. No one knew what they were talking about. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.